Everything begins in a beautiful landscape. We see a man riding a horse that appears very tired and wounded. The man touches one of his bleeding wounds. Suddenly, a bush moves. A deer emerges from the bush and the horse gets startled. The horse rears up and throws the man to the ground. The man screams as he falls to the ground. He injures his body even more. He looks at his horse. The animal is frightened. It takes off in a rush, and the man yells for his animal to come back. The man is ignored and curses loudly. He tries to get up and finds a notebook. The notebook is kept in his clothing. He is determined to survive. The man stands up and says he will return. Next, the scene shifts to the master's grand castle. A man announces to his boss that someone took the record. Kangshian is sitting on a throne and asks if it is true. He asks who it was. The advisor making the announcement informs him that it was the captain of the Wolf Blood clan named Yeonjeomho. Kangshian asks if this was not the young man assigned to the mission. The advisor confirms, and then the master questions about the Black Wind clan. The advisor responds that they all perish at the hands of the Shadow Dragon squad. Kangshian is surprised, questioning how the boy managed to survive when even the Black Wind clan did not. The advisor states he does not know how this was possible, and Kangshian, still on the throne, says he needs to see the record. He asserts that he needs to be with the boy. We are now in the Hall of the Thousand Dragons. We see Yeonjeomho kneeling. He is before the Great Master, who is sitting on the throne reading the record book the young man carried. Then the master asks if our hero knows what book he took. The protagonist responds that the book is a record with information about the Sanguine Group's network. The man sitting on the throne then asks if he knows how much money was spent to compile that record. Kneeling, Yeonjeomho responds that he does not know the exact amount but has an idea of how many people died to protect that book. Kangshian asks how many it was. The protagonist replies that it was 225 people. Surprised, Kangshian understands the sacrifice involved in protecting that book and is impressed that Yeonjeomho survived alone. Our hero, still perplexed, wonders how he managed to survive on his own. Then the scene changes to the interior of the Blood Palace, where we see men fighting. One of them shouts to capture the intruder. We are amid chaos. A blow is aimed at our warrior's face, but he dodges the thrust. He counterattacks. At that moment, several swords are launched in his direction. Fortunately, he manages to defend himself with agile maneuvers. While facing the adversaries, the Wolf Squad asks their leaders to flee while they cover the rear. They obey, and a fierce confrontation unfolds behind those escaping. A giant cleaver is thrown towards someone. Our hero counters the blow. The man with the cleaver blocks the escape of those who were fleeing and threatens them. With a downward strike, he attacks. He is aiming at the protagonist. The vice president runs desperately, shouting. He shields the protagonist with his own body. In a moment of rage, Jeomho attacks the individual in front of him. The sword strike, in turn, is fatal. At this moment, we see the protagonist's subordinate on the ground, asking him to kill him. The protagonist refuses, but his subordinate insists and says he will not survive. Reluctantly, he draws his sword towards his friend's chest. He plunges the weapon into the man. With tears and anger on his face, we see the suffering of our protagonist. The scene shifts to the master's castle. The Great Master asks his advisor Bai Gachu if there is any vacant position. He announces that there is a commander position for the Black Panther squad. The man above the throne tells him to give the position to the boy, and his attendant is surprised. His advisor says that the boy is not old enough to be a commander. Kangshian asks Jeomho if he would like to take the position, and our protagonist says yes, willing to take that position in his hands. In the armory, we see someone slamming their fist on a table. We can observe the vice commander of the Black Panther squad visibly displeased with the appointment of our protagonist. Another individual in the room with white hair remarks that the barbarians are doing as they please. Yet another with spiked hair questions if this wretch will really be their commander, rejecting the idea. They are then informed that it was a direct order from the lord of those lands. The outraged vice commander exclaims in frustration. A woman named Chugua tells the man that he's angry about losing the chance to become the official commander and asks if that's really the issue. She continues, saying he boasted, believing he would be the next commander. The man orders her to stay silent. Turning away, she says she was eager to meet the new commander. Suddenly, a man rushes into the room and everyone is surprised. The man shouts for everyone to gather outside. Reluctantly, they comply. They all stand at attention. They see the counselor with our hero by his side. The counselor introduces their new commander, Yeonjeomho, to the squad. Some men there are surprised by how young he is. The counselor leaves, saying he'll let them talk and get acquainted. At this moment, the men who had been complaining now glare at him with resentment. Our hero approaches to greet the vice commander, who has his hands on his hips. Sighing, he says it's ridiculous. He remarks that the newcomer barely arrived and is already acting like a boss. He declares that he should teach him not to become arrogant. Looking at Yeonjeomho, he says he doesn't know what tricks he used, but it will be hard for them to accept him. Our protagonist looks at him seriously. He questions if this attitude is insubordination. The vice commander looks back with an arrogant expression. He questions if someone from the Wolf Blood clan has the right to talk about insubordination. Preparing to draw his sword, the protagonist says he hates having to settle this difference with a fight. The men there are startled. However, the man with the goatee, already drawing his weapon, asks if he's challenging him, eager for a confrontation. Our hero breaks off a branch. He reveals that a piece of wood will be enough to face a mere dog. They both prepare for the fight, facing each other closely as the protagonist throws the stick near him. He asks his opponent not to regret this. The vice commander makes the first move, pushing off the ground with his right foot after grabbing the stick from the ground. He tells the newcomer that the hero shouldn't think he's the best. Thus, the fight fully begins. The challenger comments that his commander has fast footwork. He tries to strike him with an upward blow, but the protagonist dodges with great ease. The vice commander launches 3 quick consecutive strikes, but our hero dodges each one. Frustrated, the man shouts, asking how long he'll keep running. At that moment, the protagonist finds an opening and threatens a fatal strike to his throat. He decides only to hit his shoulder with the stick, showing superiority in combat. The infuriated vice commander calls Jeomho a wretch. He charges with fury, saying he'll kill him. Our hero keeps dodging the attacks. Taking advantage of an opening, he strikes the opponent's ribs with a powerful blow. He ends up leaving him breathless. Without mercy, Jeomho prepares to finish the fight. His stick is suddenly blocked by his sword. We then see a blonde-haired woman who asks him to stop because the fight is already over. The vice commander falls unconscious to the ground. The victor asks if anyone else is interested in fighting him. Everyone keeps their heads down. With that, our hero reveals that he learned to fight by going to and from hell and tells them not to fight him with those lousy martial arts. Turning to the woman who prevented him from finishing off the man, he says that from now on, she will be the new vice commander. He takes the badge from the man on the ground. He hands her the badge and she feels embarrassed by the situation. The protagonist highlights the courage she showed in defending her comrade, emphasizing that she stands out compared to those who remain submissive. With that, he turns and leaves. Our hero arrives at a door. He reflects that he needs to control himself, focusing on his breathing. He removes his attire. He thinks his ki is about to explode from the little use of his martial arts. In a memory, Jeomho receives something from a woman. She tells him it will elevate his martial abilities to a very high level, but that it can control his veins with Hwanden. Jeomho thinks he needs to manage his ki without using pills. He asserts that he will master this power. This is to save that girl, recalling the Blood Palace. Our hero is running through its corridors. We see him injured. He wonders where the record is. At this moment, as he advances, our hero encounters 2 masked men with swords who see him. However, Jeomho is already prepared for combat. With that, the 2 advance for the protagonist. Striking a blow, he thinks he must end this as quickly as possible. He manages to overpower one of the men, who falls as a result. The other receives a blow from our hero. Thus, we see that both end up being incapacitated by Jeomho. He moves forward through the place, extremely exhausted, stating that he needs to find the record as he advances. We see that, in a corridor, a woman seems to be waiting for him. But the protagonist falls due to exhaustion. He ends up being helped by carrying hands. Now we see that it is the woman who was waiting for him. Both now in a calmer place where they could rest, we see our hero lying down. He is receiving a pill in his mouth. As he swallows, he wakes up, and the woman is surprised that he woke up so quickly. She says she is a spy from the Great Master's castle and asks where the Iron Demons group is, as the plan was for her to meet them. With a sad expression, our hero says that they did not come. We can see the look of hopelessness on the woman's face. Sadly, she realizes that they were not even thinking of saving her. She takes out a book from her clothing. She hands the record to Jeomho and asks him to leave with that book. He asks how she got the book. She explains that she took it earlier to deliver it to the Iron Demons because she gained the trust of an elder, so there would be no suspicion of her. Jeomho asks for them to leave that place together. But with his sad voice, she says that if they go together, they will both end up dead and that this record must reach the castle. Only then will her family survive. At that moment, we see several soldiers heading toward our hero. He quickly realizes their arrival. As he turns, the woman wishes him good luck in his endeavor. Before leaving, Jeomho asks for her name. She responds that she has forgotten her own name and hopes she does not have to live like this. She then moves down the corridor. Jeomho shouts that he will come back to save her. The woman responds with a slight smile. Our hero decides that he must first return to the Great Master's castle. He plans to use his ability to increase his power. With that, a massive aura emerges from his body. His expression darkens. The atmosphere around him releases an enormous power. The men who were searching for him appear and authoritatively announce they have found him. Jeomho invites them to battle. He advances, slicing through them all. The scene shifts and we see our hero meditating in his room. At that moment, he spits blood. He falls to the ground. He realizes he still cannot control his ki and ended up losing concentration. Remembering his comrades, he wonders how he will be able to face them like this. Now lying down and coughing blood in his room. He thinks he hears something. A voice speaks to him, saying that even if he understood everything wrong, he is alive and asks the protagonist to accept him as his master because he will help him. At that moment, Jeomho asks who he is. The voice continues, telling our hero to become the disciple of the divine archer. But even on the ground and bloody, he says that no matter who the person behind the voice is, he will not accept them as his master. The voice calls him ungrateful. At that moment, he begins to writhe in pain. The voice asks again if Jeomho will accept him as his master, but our hero still refuses. The voice calls him an idiot, and the protagonist continues to suffer and feel pain. Finally, he loses consciousness. In the armory division, which appears to be the next day, we see our hero lying on the ground. The vice commander is calling for him. The protagonist begins to wake up. She asks if he knows about the welcoming ceremony. She wonders if he is really in that place or not. Then she thinks something is wrong and calls for the commander. She shouts that she will enter and prepares to kick the door. Jeomho responds, saying he will attend the ceremony soon. The vice commander says they will wait for him, and our protagonist agrees. Thinking, the vice commander finds the situation strange as it has been 3 days since Jeomho has been inside that room. In the inner courtyard of the armory division, we see some men clearly angry and fighting. One of them says it's just a boy from the Wolf Blood clan provoking him. Soon, one of the men receives a blow, followed by another who appears and kicks our protagonist's subordinate. The subordinate quickly reacts, kicking both of them simultaneously, creating an impact that pushes them away. He reveals that they now belong to the Black Panther squad and no longer to the Wolf clan. and it was the others who started the fight. At that moment, the two men charge at the subordinate and begin throwing blows. One of them throws punches, the other defends himself. Then one of them starts a sequence of kicks. He then receives a blow to his face. He is surprised by what happened. The fat man blames our hero's subordinate and questions how the Black Panther squad dares to raise its head. He says the former commander embezzled money, the new one is just a boy, and he ridicules the fact that the vice commander is a woman. Clenching his teeth, the white-haired man tells him not to use such weak arguments. Approaching the man on the ground, the fat man says that he has become bolder since becoming a subordinate of our protagonist. He yells at him not to dishonor his commander. With that, we see the fat man about to hit our hero's subordinate, calling him a scoundrel. But the man's hand is stopped. We see that it was Jiyomo who stopped him. His subordinate is surprised by the presence of his leader. The man is also surprised. At that moment, our hero tells the man that if he has matters to settle, he should settle them with him. And that fat man thinks the protagonist is strong and cannot move. Our protagonist continues, saying that he will handle anyone who messes with a Black Panther this way. He then breaks the man's arm, bending it into an L shape. The fat man, desperate, starts screaming. He begins to writhe in pain. However, our hero shows no reaction. The man then falls to the ground due to the pain. Those around are shocked by the scene. With that, Jiyomo simply turns and walks away. In the next scene, we see our hero alone in what appears to be a small cabin in the middle of the forest. At this moment, he is assessing his physical condition. He notices that his blood flow is better and that his ki is no longer exploding. While meditating, he realizes that if he focuses on controlling his mind, his veins no longer react. He wonders if he can truly control this power if he can control his mind, and asks himself what that voice was. Now in the Hall of the Thousand Dragons, we see the Great Master speaking with his advisor about the protagonist. He asks if he should laugh or be angry because he is genuinely curious to know if he really broke the arm of the Green Tiger's leader. His advisor confirms that this happened and also says that the moment he became commander, he took control. He reveals that demonstrating his strength will make the other squads stay away. The Great Master, pleased, says that he was right and that our protagonist is indeed impressive. We then see him walking close to the window of his palace. Observing our protagonist from there, he thinks that the only problem is that he is unpredictable. We then see a young woman beside him who reveals herself as his daughter, the fourth princess of the Great Master's castle, Oyurin, who asks what her father is looking at so intently. The man sees Yura and says he didn't see her come in. She asks why he is acting that way. He says there is nothing wrong and asks what she wants, as she was looking at him with a pleading expression. She says that if anyone hears that, it might think she is spoiled. The Great Master jokingly asks if she really isn't. However, she calls her father to sit, and she seats him in a chair. She gives him a neck massage. She asks if it is relaxing. The Great Master questions her, wanting to know her real intentions. At that moment, she reveals that it is a request from the bottom of her heart. Her father says that the Yurin he knows would not be so formal and asks if what she wants is money. She starts to express her request. She turns and kneels before her father. She says she would like to attend the Dragon Lance Dance competition that will take place in Luoyang. Her father, biting his lips, denies the request. She begs with a sad look, saying she really wants to go, but he confirms that he will not let her. Indignant, she huffs. He explains that the current situation is not good, and as he has already said, that will not change. Pouting, she stands up and turns around. Frustrated, Yurin says that he has been repeating the same thing for 15 years. She turns her back on her father and leaves the room. She slams the door shut. The Great Master puts his hand on his head, tired of his daughter's stubbornness. The scene then shifts to the banquet hall of the Armory Division. There, the entire Black Panther squad, led by our protagonist, is gathered. One of the subordinates comments that thanks to the captain, the squad's position has greatly improved. The one who was previously protected states that from now on, no one will attack or bother them anymore. Another man suggests that they pledge loyalty to the commander and make a toast in his name. Everyone raises their cups of sake. Jiyomo appears a little embarrassed. Our protagonist also holds a cup of sake and drinks. When everything seems calm, someone kicks the door open. It's Yuren. She is looking for Jiyomo. Jiyomo stares at Yuren. He questions who this young woman really is. She then responds that this is the first time someone has asked who she is. The vice captain of the squad calls the protagonist's attention. She says that this is Yuren, the fourth princess of the Great Master's castle. Jiyomo greets her, stating that he is the commander of the Black Panther squad. She then summons him, asking him to step outside because she wants to talk to him. Our protagonist doesn't fully understand the situation, but when she turns, he follows her. In the garden of the Armory Division, they stand side by side. He looks at her staring. He asks what she would like to talk to him about at that moment. She responds that she would like to see something. He asks what it would be. She then looks back at him standing in front of him. Not understanding what is happening, he is surprised and stands still. She says she would like to know why her father admires him so much. And what is his secret? She wants to know, trying to grab his arm. But our protagonist pulls away from her touch. He responds that if she has nothing to say, he will leave because the others are waiting for him. As he is about to leave, she says she wants to talk to him about something. He turns back. She says she will be direct and asks him to take her to the Dragon Lance Dance martial arts competition in Luoyang. He questions why she would ask this of him. She says she doesn't know, she just wants him to help her in her small rebellion against her father. At that moment, we see that something is happening as our protagonist seems alert. Jiyomo stretches his arm to reach Yurin. Some kanes are being thrown in their direction. Jiyomo manages to dodge them, taking Yurin with him. The kanes hit the ground. Now with his body over hers, he is protecting her. He shouts, asking who is there, and she complains about what he is doing. At that moment, our hero looks in a certain direction and demands that the person reveal themselves. we see a man fleeing from a bush, apparently the attacker. He then tells the Great Master's daughter to stay there. He charges toward the individual who attacked her. She wonders what those hidden kumes were. She becomes furious because someone attacked her in her own garden. In the forest, our protagonist is pursuing the one who threw the kumes. We see that our protagonist is close to catching the man. He grabs a knife he has with him and throws it toward the mysterious man. However, at that moment, the man manages to dodge it easily. Our protagonist is frustrated at not being able to hit him. The man, whose identity remains unclear, lands on the ground. He draws his weapon. Our protagonist was already moving toward him, aiming for a downward strike. With his sword, he targets the man's head. But the opponent dodges easily, and the sword only hits the ground. Now the man is attacking our protagonist, and they engage in a sword fight. Giacomo realizes that the mysterious man is not mediocre with a sword. The shadowy attacker tries to thrust his sword at our hero. He manages to dodge. He notices that the martial techniques of this man are from the Great Master's castle. At that moment, a voice shouts for him to move aside. Both are surprised. We see that it is the Great Master's daughter, Yuren. She enters the battle with a fierce attack but hits the ground, destroying it. She declares that she will fight him. At this moment, pointing her sword at the individual, she warns him that she will battle him. The mysterious man, realizing the situation, turns his back. He tries to flee once again. She orders him to stop, shouting. As she runs toward him, Giacomo notices that she has a strong energy and wonders if this energy is due to her rigorous training since childhood. He then leaps toward them. We see that he is close to reaching the Great Master's daughter. She says that at this moment it's no use chasing that man. She announces that her techniques are well developed in Kingong, which is the skill of balance. Giacomo asks why he would attack Yuren, and she reveals that she is not sure. Our hero questions if she has no idea who he might be, but Yuren says she has spent her entire life in the palace, so she hasn't met enough people to make enemies. The protagonist advises her to be careful, as it seemed like someone from the castle, and she asks if he is afraid. Looking at his face, she thinks he looks cute. Yuren gives him a kiss on the cheek to thank him. She verbally thanks him for saving her. At this moment, the scene changes to the castle walls. We see the mysterious man landing on a platform. He removes his hat, and we realize he is the subordinate of the Great Master of the tower. His advisor states that he almost got caught. Then, in the Palace of 1,000 Dragons, we see the darkened expression of the Great Master. He asks the man how it went. His advisor reveals that he threw some kunes, and that she must have been frightened. But the Great Master questions the use of kunes and asks what he would have done if he had hit her. The man reveals that he threw them in a way that Yuren could dodge them on her own. The Lord of those lands then says he did not order him to attack her, only to scare her so she would stop wanting to go to that competition. At that moment, the advisor reveals that the commander of the Black Panther squad managed to block the attack, so he didn't even get close to injuring her. The man sitting on the throne asks if the commander was with his daughter. The advisor confirms that yes, she sought him out herself. The Great Master sighs. In the armory division, we see our hero meditating. He appears to be making a great effort, with veins bulging on his face and arms and sweat dripping down his body. In this state, Giacomo begins to have a vision, a light in the midst of darkness. He wonders what that is and if it's someone's memory. In the Celestial Palace, a great war unfolds before him with various martial artists fighting to the death. Giacomo, observing the scene, wonders what is happening. Amid the chaos, we see an old man with long white hair taking down men as if they were mere insects. He is overwhelmingly dominant in that battle. Wherever he passes, men perish. In that place, we see our protagonist stepping over some fallen bodies. He steps forcefully. The blood of the fallen stains the protagonist's clothing. We have a view of the battlefield. 3 men lay fallen before the old man. The old man looks at our protagonist. He asks if he still refuses to accept him as his master. Giacomo, surprised, says nothing for the moment. The man laughs. Our protagonist says he doesn't know who he is but asks him to reveal his identity. The powerful old man laughs and tells our protagonist that he is brave. He also says he likes him. At that moment, our protagonist has another vision. In the law enforcement division inside the Jade prison, Giacomo is kneeling in front of someone. He is surprised and bewildered. The man standing before him is the same elder from before. Our hero wonders where he is now. The elder asks him to follow. They start walking through a place that seems like a castle or an abandoned dungeon. They descend stairs. The elder passes through a gate. Giacomo still doesn't understand where he is, until he comes across a scene that shocks him. First, he sees a chained hand, then a torso. Finally, he sees the body of an old man, chained and wounded with his head lowered. His hair covers his face. At that moment, he approaches. He realizes it is the same elder who previously asked him to follow. He asks Giacomo to follow his voice. As he stares at him, his eyes shine. The glow intensifies. Now in the dormitory of the armory division, the protagonist wakes up from his supposed trance, startled and surprised. With this, he understands that the person who spoke to him is imprisoned in the Jade prison, and that he needs to go there to confirm this. Now in the training area, which appears to be another day, we see several men practicing their martial arts. The vice commander of the Black Panther squad says that today is the day to meet Oh Jae-hyun. Our hero asks if this is really a good time, and she asks if he is nervous since it was Oh Jae-hyun himself who arranged this meeting. With a serious expression, our protagonist reveals that he is aware of this. In the blue circles, there are several men eating. A man smiling looks surprised in a certain direction. Then our protagonist appears, introducing himself and stating that he is Eun Ji-yong-ho, the commander of the Black Panther squad. The man smiling at him says there is no need to be so formal, and offers him a cup of sake. He says they will drink a lot tonight. At that moment, they wish each other good health. As they drink, our hero thinks he needs an opportunity to take the man's identification tag. Later that night, in that place, Our protagonist seems a little drunk. The man who was drinking with him tries to help and asks if he is okay. At that moment, with a stealthy and quick movement, our protagonist appears to take something from his waist. Chiyomo says he's going out to get some air. Then, out on the street, we see that the identification he carries is Oh Jae-hyun's identity insignia, the Archduke of the castle. With that, he thinks he must enter the Jade prison, and jumping across rooftops, he heads in that direction. In the enforcement division at the Jade prison, we see a man who appears to be a guard. He asks what this man intends to do there. We then see our protagonist in disguise. He shows an identity to the bald guard. However, the guard says he wasn't informed of anyone coming to that place. Our protagonist says it was a direct and emergency order. The bald guard says he never received such an order, so he must return quickly and bring a formal visitation request. But Chiyomo asks if he is refusing the order of the bearer of the Yellow Dragon tag. We then see both of them descending a staircase. They reach a dungeon. The protagonist asks to be left alone because the order he received was to keep his conversation confidential. The guard says that is impossible. Our hero, bluffing, says he has the authority to kill anyone who disobeys the bearer of that tag. With that, the guard leaves frustrated, and at that moment, Chiyomo looks relieved. Chiyomo approaches the cell. When he touches it, he observes the man with white hair and multiple stakes piercing his body. The man, apparently speaking in his mind, tells our protagonist that he took a long time and asks if he came to learn the verse of resonance. The protagonist, wondering what that is, questions if this is the name of the chant he learned and asks the man who he is. The man with glowing and piercing eyes tells our protagonist to answer his question first. At this moment, our hero says he learned it in the Blood Palace. The old man looks surprised by this response. Seemingly both enthusiastic and enraged, he asks if it was really the Blood Palace. Our protagonist is overwhelmed by the old man's wave of anger, needing to cover his ears. The old man shouts that Ganya Mundo will kill him and calls him a scoundrel. The old man says he doesn't have much time and that he will pass the verse of resonance to the boy. The protagonist asks what is happening. At that moment, they both meditate together. Their auras resonate. The guard announces that the protagonist's time is up. Our hero, turning his back on the man, sees that he is smiling, and in his mind, the man tells him to return. With that, our protagonist turns his back on the man. In the blue circles, our protagonist appears in the presence of the man from whom he previously stole. He casually drops the man's identification on the ground. The man asks if our hero is okay and says he almost sent someone after him because he was worried. Chiyomo says he is fine. He picks up the insignia from the ground. Handing it to the man, he asks if it belongs to him. The man seems surprised by this gesture, and our hero, without words and sweating nervously, waits for the man's response. However, the man begins to laugh, wondering how it ended up there and that something bad could have happened. At this moment, the man looks seriously at our hero. In the armory division, our protagonist is meditating, following the old man's advice, overflowing his energy to control his ki. In his mind, he thinks that even if his ki explodes, he will not lose focus and that this technique must be from the Celestial Palace. Our hero hears the old man in his mind saying that this is how it should be done, and our protagonist asks him not to interfere in his mind. Then the voice says it will reveal who he is. With that, our protagonist has a vision. In a grand palace surrounded by forests, the man begins to tell his story of how he ended up there. He says he was the first disciple of Ganya Wugi, the master of the Celestial Palace. At the age of 30, he mastered the verse of resonance to become the next leader. We then see an old man handing a sword to someone kneeling. In the same scene, we see someone appearing outraged by this, and the voice continues, saying that Ganya Mundo, the son of Ganya, did not accept him as the next leader. He says that under his leadership, the Celestial Palace wielded power to control the entire central plane. We then see that man, now older, appearing to have mastered many things, and he continues, explaining that he tried his best to pass on his skills to others. We see him writing on scrolls. He mentions that then something happened. We see him in the middle of a war. We see Ganya saying they are close to defeating the traitor and that he is already exhausted. Then we see the old man who was in prison shouting that they are the traitors. Many men with crazed eyes and uncontested rage rush toward the old man. He tells them to come at him with a fierce look. Several men with blades prepare to attack the lone man. At that moment, the old man uses a sword strike, managing to land the blow on 3 men simultaneously. With that, all those attacking him are cut down by his power. The remaining men, frightened and terrified, become paralyzed with fear, unable to react. At this moment, the old man charges toward them with his sword. He begins to strike each of them. The men, shaking off their fear-induced paralysis, start fleeing, calling him a monster. The old man, maddened with rage, leaps from where he stands. He goes after each of them. He uses his sword to hunt down and slaughter them one by one. Then, when all seem to be dead, the old man faces his traitor, Ganya. His traitor is terrified. The old man shouts his name, saying that now it is his turn. The traitor, with a desperate look, wonders when they will arrive. At that moment, the old man looks behind him. He sees men in red cloaks. They wear masks with different symbols and have a bloodthirsty gaze. He looks at them but shows no reaction. Ganya Mundo is relieved as they have finally arrived. Those men leap from their vantage point and head toward the long-haired elder. At this moment, the elder begins to use his ki power and aura. The men draw their swords and point them at the elder. They prepare their swords, taking aim. At that moment, the elder unleashes a powerful strike with his sword toward the hooded men. His blow is strong, pushing the hooded men back. One of them aims his sword at the white-haired man. His sword is split by the elder's force. He targets the tip of his intact sword and pierces the stomach of an enemy. Some of them seem defeated. However, their leader makes a gesture. The others follow him like a pack. They move in harmony from side to side. They begin circling the old man. At that moment, one of the hooded men attempts to attack him from behind. The elder's reflex is quicker, and he cuts him in half. Realizing it was just an illusion, we see another attempting to strike him at that moment. With this, he manages to wound the man at the level of his ribs. The old man feels the blow. Several frenzied attacks from all sides start hitting him, cornering him. However, he still manages to retaliate. At that moment, a man attempts to deliver the final blow, but the elder does not give up. He manages to kill one of his attackers. However, as he attacks, another appears behind him and strikes with his palm. The elder falls. He is dazed. One of the hooded men pushes him. Everyone on the battlefield celebrates this supposed victory. At this moment, the hooded men grab the elder. In the armory division, our hero is meditating. Someone calls out, saying that the second princess, Osurin, is urgently summoning him. He wakes up from his meditation and wonders what's happening. In the Hall of 1,000 Dragons, we see our protagonist presenting himself to the second princess. He asks why he was summoned. She says that her sister, Yurin, has disappeared. He realizes that this is the mission, this is the problem. She asks why he doesn't seem surprised. With that, our hero responds that she asked him to take her to a martial arts competition, and her sister understands that she must have gone to Luoyang alone. Desperate, the second princess asks Jiyomo to find Yurin. He asks why she chose him. She says she knows he was the one who retrieved the record from the Blood Palace. She reveals that, as he managed to complete this mission alone, he must have extremely strong and useful skills. Our hero feels honored by her words, and she adds that her father agreed that he should be the one to find Yurin. Jiyomo agrees to carry out the mission and will depart the next day. The second princess wishes him good luck, and he leaves. The protagonist thinks that this might be a good opportunity since he will have the chance to meet that old man again and finish what they started last time. At the Jade Prison, we see old man still chained. He senses our hero's presence. Facing him, Jiyomo stares. The old man smiles and says that his disciple must already be accustomed to the resonance chant. Standing up, the old man says he will pass on everything he knows. With a commanding pose and gaze, he asks his disciple to come closer. With these words, our protagonist asks the old man why he is doing this for him, and the old man says it's probably a matter of destiny. He asks our hero to untie the bindings of the stakes embedded in his body. He tells him to do it quickly because there is not much time. He instructs the protagonist to remove everything at once, and that he will manage on his own. Grabbing a thread, Jiyomo prepares himself and pulls out all the stakes from the old man's back in one swift motion. Our hero pulls them out with a quick movement, managing to remove them all at once. We then see that the elder uses a technique and seemingly manages to stop the bleeding. Seeing this, Jiyomo is impressed. The old man says he will activate the Pact of Resonance. At that moment, our protagonist begins to activate his key power. The old man does the same. The elder places his hand on our hero's back. He starts to scream, as he appears to be transferring something to Jiyomo. We witness what seems to be the Pact of Resonance. The old man warns our hero not to faint as he will perish if he does, since his veins will pulse until he dies. At that moment, Jiyomo forces himself to remain conscious. The elder uses his ability on the protagonist but loses his strength to stand. The old man falls to his knees. Our protagonist becomes concerned, calling the elder old man. The elder asks if it isn't time for him to start calling him master. Jiyomo asks if he is alright. The elder says that this is all he can do but asks our hero to survive by his own strength. At that moment, someone says they are approaching. We see people entering the corridors of the prison. Jiyomo notices. He says someone is heading their way and that they must leave. Grabbing our hero's arm, the old man says he will pass on his final lesson and asks him not to be bound to any place, to be free and live like the wind. Jiyomo questions the elder about what that means. At that exact moment, the old man's eyes lose their shine. Jiyomo, with sadness, murmurs that he hopes his master rests in peace. Next, we see hurried footsteps. Men approach the cells. Among them is the Great Master, who asks the man beside him if someone with such an important identity was really there. The man confirms that yes, and that he did not send anyone there. The guard, realizing something is wrong, he looks at the dead, kneeling elder. He approaches and checks the elder's pulse. He confirms that he has indeed passed away. With that, the Great Master says that, as An Woojuk said, he was no different from the others and questions if he died after passing his abilities to another person. The guard reveals that the intruder was there for only 15 minutes, not enough time for that. Outside the prison, we see Jiyomo. He questions whether there was someone who valued him more than their own life, and he places a conviction in his heart that he will follow his master's will as a disciple of the Celestial Palace. Back in the Armory Division, we see that Jiyomo has summoned his vice commander. He informs her that he has received a mission from the higher-ups and will need to leave the castle. The vice commander questions what he means by this. He asks her to relay this information to the members of the squad. At that moment, the vice commander tries to say that he hasn't been there for long, and our hero thanks her for everything she has done. Turning his back, he asks her to take care of the squad in his absence. She calls out to him. He turns to look back. She pays her respects to him and says that it is they who should be grateful for everything he has done. With that, Jiyomo feels satisfied with everything that has happened, and he leaves the lands of the Great Master to embark on his mission. He looks back one last time, takes a deep breath. Now far from the palace, he wonders if it is his fate to live like the wind. He thinks that although his master told him not to stay tied to any place, he will seek vengeance in his name. In the garden of the Hall of the 1,000 Dragons, we see a man asking if Jiyomo went to look for Yurin. A woman confirms this and calls him brother. The son of the Great Master thinks he knows Jiyomo Jiyomo is capable but doesn't fully trust him. The woman asks why he is suspicious since Jiyomo has already earned their father's trust. The man confirms this and asks how long it has been since he left. She reveals that it has been 15 minutes. The man then says he will also step out for a bit, in a forest far from that location. We see our protagonist sensing a presence. He perceives a blade being aimed at his back. He intercepts the blade and asks his attackers who they are. We see several men with swords and masks who do not reveal their names. At that moment, one of them attempts to strike toward his face, but our hero dodges. Using his own body's weight, he swings his sword toward one of their heads. However, one of the men protects his companion. At this moment, he realizes they have good coordination together. All the attackers move toward him simultaneously. At that moment, he looks up and notices someone observing. It is the son of his master, wondering if it's possible to tell if Jiyomo is hiding his abilities with those slow attacks. The battle continues. One of the men attacks Jiyomo, who grazes the man's arm but continues dodging the attacks from his enemies. He thinks they must be testing him because the attacks don't seem intended to kill him. And he thinks they don't seem very strong, but he believes the resonance pack he received has worsened his technique. With that, the three men attack him simultaneously with several rapid strikes. Our hero retreats to gain more space in the area. He has a plan. Jiyomo turns and enters the tall grass nearby, leaving the men surprised. One of them orders the others to start searching for the protagonist. Several of them enter the grass. One of them seems to sense a presence. Stealthily, Jiyomo attacks one of the men in the grass. The man cries out in pain. The observer from the tree notices the action. He concludes that Jiyomo does not hesitate to use low techniques. In response, he orders the men to disperse. They flee. The protagonist sheathes his weapon. He thinks that this should be enough for that man. In a large city, our protagonist tries to stop at a location. Inside, it appears to be an inn. One of the men at the door asks if he is alone, and he confirms. The man with a mustache asks if he minds sharing a table as the place is crowded. Jiyomo responds that he doesn't mind. He just wants to quench his thirst. The man asks him to follow. Next, we see another person asking a woman sitting at a table if she would mind sharing the space. She responds that she doesn't, and we see that it's a woman with light hair wearing a diadem on her head. With that, our protagonist approaches and sits at the table. The woman accompanying him offers him a drink. He thanks her. She introduces herself as Moyeong Seolji from the Moyeong family. Our hero also introduces himself as Eun Jiyomo and says he is just a wanderer. She asks what brought him to the city, and he says he is simply looking for someone. She then asks if he intends to gather information from people in inns or competition halls. He thinks that asking in inns might help in his search for urine. She says she will take her leave as she has other duties, and our hero says he enjoyed her company. He reflects on the woman Seolji and realizes she has a rather unusual aura. At the White Poplar residence, we see someone placing a cup on the table. We see two people, one of them an extremely strong elder. It is revealed that the elder is the patriarch of the Verdant Forest faction, and he asks his companion how she dares accuse him of assisting the sanguinary group. We see that the person is Seolji, and she says that all circumstances point to him and questions if his faction has nothing to do with the sanguinary group. The man considers her extremely bold. He grabs an axe and throws it in her direction. The object passes by the side of her face. However, it destroys the tree just behind her. She shows no sign of surprise or fear. The muscular man is surprised by her composure. She then asks if, when one connects with the will of the eight heavens, they do not lose consciousness and fall into a vegetative state. The old man appears surprised by her statement. She reveals that the sanguinary group must have provided pills to control this. However, these pills are traps as they can cause veins to pulse until death. He, confused, questions what she is talking about. But she says she knows that Jongra Muzang, the emperor of the faction, is under the control of these pills and warns that if he continues consuming them, his faction will become puppets of the sanguinary group. The strong man, now downcast, reveals that he had no choice because the clan was on the brink of collapse. She asks if he won't do anything to help his clan, and he says he will send a message to the emperor to assist him with this and thanks the young woman. She says she will pretend that he did not attack her. Now, in another place at night, we see a man entering through a door. He says he wants to ask the owner of the establishment something. Jiyomo asks if any young woman has stayed at the inn. The innkeeper says there are only men there. So our hero asks if there is any vacant room, and the innkeeper offers to show him. He thinks he still hasn't found any clues about Yurin's whereabouts. In his room, he begins to use his aura. He hears cries for help, calling for assistance. At that moment, Jiyomo realizes the cries are coming from the roof. We then see hooded and masked men moving across the rooftop, but the protagonist finds them and orders them to stop. At that moment, a chase begins from rooftop to rooftop. The two men are carrying a large sack and Jiyomo is on their heels. He thinks that today his body feels light. He senses that the wind is guiding him. The men, who appear to have committed a kidnapping, are startled by Jiyomo's presence. With this, our hero tests his powers, releasing a gust of wind. The gust rushes forward, passing close to the man with the sack. He thinks he needs to control this power better. He channels another gust of wind into his arm. He launches it toward the man. This time, he hits his back. Jiyomo feels satisfied for achieving his goal. The criminal falls unconscious. The sack falls to the ground. We then see that inside is the elderly innkeeper. The protagonist rushes toward him. He asks if he is okay, and the old man thanks him. At that moment, one of the kidnappers, irritated, tries to attack our hero with a spear. He aims and throws the spear, but Jiyomo notices the attack and manages to dodge it. The other, who was previously on the ground, gets up. He also attacks him with a sword. At this moment, Jiyomo thinks it's a good opportunity to test his strength. He dodges the attack. The masked man with a top knot tells his adversary that if he doesn't want to get hurt, You should leave. The protagonist smirks sarcastically and says it's nice that they are concerned for him. The man, irritated by this statement, charges our protagonist while the other prepares an attack. He raises his spear and twirls it in the air. The one with the sword warns our hero to prepare for the strike. However, the protagonist readies his power. He channels an abundant amount of energy into his hand. With this, he strikes his attacker. The villain at that moment is stunned, unable to understand what happened, as the power was immense and he is sent flying. Giacomo realizes he is starting to understand his resonance power better. At that moment, the bald man prepares his strike. He aims with all his strength at our protagonist, but our hero once again uses his channeling power, hitting the man's stomach, sending him flying. We then see those two men knocked out on the ground. While the hero releases even more of his power and ki, the protagonist looks at them confidently. The men realize they need to run, and one of them wonders how Giacomo can be so strong. Once they are far away, the protagonist focuses on the injured old man. He asks again if he is alright, and the weakened elder affirms that his abilities are incredible. Our hero says he will take him to the infirmary. However, the old man grabs his arm. He says it is already too late. Giacomo tells him to hold on, that the infirmary is not far. He introduces himself as Joil, the branch manager of the Hao family in Luoyang. Hearing this, the protagonist is surprised to learn that he is part of the Hao family. The old man, coughing and on the brink of death, asks the protagonist to deliver a token to his daughter, I'm so-so. But Giacomo urges the old man to hold on a little longer. The elder says he will repay this debt even after death. Our hero calls out to the old man once more. However, seeing the vacant, lifeless eyes, he realizes the man has passed away. Giacomo gently closes the elder's eyes. He reflects that yet another life has been lost in vain. In the daylight of the same city, we see the protagonist examining what the old man had given him. He wonders what the old man had gotten involved in to be hunted in such a manner. He sees that the paper he was given is a code he doesn't understand. He thinks that, according to the elder's wishes, he must go to the Hao family. At that moment, we see Giacomo in what appears to be a humble village. He thinks he has found the place. He imagines that this must be a family in crisis. We then see the village of the fallen moon. The protagonist is climbing stairs toward a large house. One of the guards approaches him and asks who he is. Giacomo says he is there to speak with Joil's daughter. A young woman then appears beside the guard. She asks if he is looking for her. Our hero asks if she is Miss So-so, and she confirms. He hands her the paper and the token the deceased elder had given him. She reads the message. Her eyes begin to fill with tears. She shouts to the guards, ordering them to show respect to our protagonist. All the guards kneel before him. He in turn asks what is going on, clearly confused. Still crying, she thanks him for bringing her father's identification token. Our hero asks her to stand, saying he was only there to fulfill a favor for a deceased father. She asks the name of the man before her, and he replies, Giacomo. She asks if this great warrior witnessed her father's final moments, and he says yes. Still crying and visibly deeply saddened by the news. We then see Giacomo inside. At this moment, he is drinking with a young woman. She reveals that through this martial arts competition, her father was monitoring the sanguinary group and their conspiracies. He realizes that it was indeed the work of the sanguinary group. She explains that her father probably anticipated it, as he already had that letter written. Giacomo asks her why the elder risked his life for this. So-so reveals that he did it for the peace of the martial arts world, and he couldn't refuse because it was a direct request from the Moyang family, who had already been monitoring those groups. Our hero then asks if it was the Moyang family, and So-so confirms, saying that Moyang Suolji had paid a visit. He thinks it must have been the woman he met at the inn, and he asks what she plans to do now. So-so reveals that she will now fulfill her father's mission and thanks him for delivering the letter to her, to which the man before her responds that she does not need to thank him. Looking at one of her guards, she instructs him to prepare as they will leave immediately. We see a dense forest along the road. Our hero informs them that he will be taking his leave now. She thanks Giacomo once again, saying that thanks to him, she will be able to accomplish what her father could not, and he wishes her good luck. But at that moment, our hero has a strange feeling and realizes it comes from the wind. Giacomo hears something, and then we see a sword flying in his direction. He manages to dodge it and notices that the sword has a crimson hilt, recognizing it as the Shadow Squadron of the Sanguinary Clan. They are there to abduct So-so. Giacomo becomes enraged at the sight of those men. The young woman draws her sword and points it at them. She is furious because those men killed her father. She charges toward them, attacking. But at that moment, our protagonist intervenes. He uses his power to repel all those men. He grips his sword tightly, fury and rage flare in his eyes. With incredible speed and skill, he makes several slashes through the air. His strikes shatter the swords of his enemies. He breathes a sigh of relief, then he looks back. He sees that she has been subdued by a man wearing a red hood. Just as the man is about to harm So-so, we see our hero appear, protecting her with his blade. He forces his sword with all his strength, and with a counterattack, he strikes the man, severing his head. Following this action, several other men in red hoods appear before him. Giacomo asks if So-so is alright. She responds affirmatively, but says that those men are very strong. He says it's useless because they will only stop when each of their heads is cut off. The woman says they should aim for the head only, and our hero tells her to go and inform the Moyang family of what's happening, because that is the best course of action at the moment. So-so tries to protest, but the protagonist reminds her that she herself said the most important thing is to maintain peace in the martial arts world. The men are prepared for battle. We then see our hero shouting for her to go quickly. As he prepares for combat, he thinks this is the perfect chance to use his technique, the 10 sword similarity. Activating his ki, we see several swords manifesting in the air. These swords are made of ki. They surround him. He realizes he has finally mastered this skill. He gains momentum and launches them toward his enemies. They, in turn, begin dodging and fleeing from the weapons. I'm So tries to escape on a horse. However, the one who appears to be the leader orders his subordinates to go after her. Several of them head in her direction, but our hero appears in front of them to block their path. He says they'll have to kill him before they can go after her. At that moment, the leader glares at him with anger. He orders his men to kill him. The protagonist leaps toward his enemies. He feels as if his techniques connect him to his sword. He maneuvers it with precision, following the flow of the wind. With his fluid and rapid movements, he cuts down 2 more of his enemies. More of them appear before him. He slices through them as if they were paper. Our hero is finishing his strike. We see that the strong-looking man is impressed, seeing his subordinates being subdued by a single man. Now our hero stands among the fallen. He looks at the leader with a threatening and defiant expression. The white-haired man thinks the protagonist must be joking. Snapping his fingers, more subordinates appear. They create an illusion of someone flying. Jiyomo says that tricks won't work on him, but he is momentarily surprised. He finds himself unable to move. He regrets this. Several of those illusions surround the leader. He charges toward Jiyomo. The strong man appears to be using his ability. We see that the protagonist is struck. He is hurled with force and crashes against a tree trunk. The protagonist realizes that this is the dragon spirit's interflux technique, one he has heard of before. Our hero finds himself surrounded by multiple enemies. He remains paralyzed, unable to move. The leader says he will eliminate him. Our hero tries to calm himself, thinking the influx is also just a trick. He wonders if there's any technique his master taught him that could counter this. He begins to meditate. At that moment, the leader of the attackers charges toward him, shouting for him to perish. But our hero grimaces. A gust of wind produced by a blade is seen. The protagonist manages to dodge. He dives to the side, and the man who intended to kill him strikes the tree behind him. Our hero retrieves his sword from the ground. The enemy leader shouts in frustration. But at this moment, Jiyomo has already prepared his counterattack. However, the attack is intercepted by the enemy leader. The protagonist, focused on the battle, locks blades with him. The 2 men stare each other down, but our hero puts a bit more force into his skills. He pushes the enemy leader back. The leader is airborne and stunned. At that moment, the man mid-air orders his subordinates to attack. Our hero, preparing his strikes once more, thinks that he will not fall for the same trick twice. He cuts down each of the men before him, beheading them. But behind them, we see 4 more silhouettes approaching. Jiyomo shouts. Turning around, we see him delivering several slashes with his blade. The blade becomes soaked with the blood of his enemies. With this opening, the leader of those men charges once again at our protagonist. He tries to strike from behind, but something happens. We see a blade dripping with blood. The man is confused. He was just about to use his attack. Jiyomo wonders what happened. We see the large man kneeling. Behind him is So on horseback. So appears exhausted. Our hero calls her name, surprised, and we see that she was the one responsible for delivering the fatal blow to the man. The hooded men begin to vanish. Jiyomo sheaths his sword. Relieved, she rides toward him, calling his name. He asks if she found the documents, and she confirms, showing them to him. With tears in her eyes, she says that thanks to him, she was able to complete her father's final mission. Our hero, with a serious but happy expression, says there is no need to thank him and asks her to be careful. She bows and says she will be eternally grateful to him. Jiyomo, returning the bow, asks her to take care. He then turns and continues his journey. It is now night. In the garden of the Moyang family, we see 2 people talking. So indicates that she is present. She shows the records to the woman from before. The woman tells her she did a good job. She hands her a red pouch. The woman standing before her asks what it is. The woman with the diadem on her forehead says it is Jolil's reward. She reveals that he protected the peace of the martial world, so his sacrifice was honored. So reveals that, in truth, there is someone else who should receive that prize, and she mentions our protagonist's name. The woman with the diadem on her forehead thinks it must be the young man she met at the inn. So continues, saying that he defeated all the enemies at once using his martial skills. The woman is surprised that he managed to accomplish such a feat. In a dense forest, our hero advances on his journey through the forest and thinks that the appearance of the shadow dragon assassins shows that the sanguinary group is planning something and he needs to find Yurin soon. At that moment, he has another premonition. He wonders what this feeling is. We then see someone with long hair approaching. The figure lands on the ground, revealing their long white hair. The man says that Jiyomo was indeed very skilled. He further reveals that he is not surprised that the Shadow Dragon Squadron was defeated by him. Jiyomo then asks the white-haired man if he is part of the sanguinary group. The man reveals that because of what Jiyomo did, he had to come personally. The protagonist asks for his name. However, the white-haired man says that for someone about to perish, he is quite curious. He then introduces himself as Bai Hawal. He releases his aura and abilities toward our protagonist. Our hero prepares for battle. He leaps and dodges the white-haired man's attacks. To prepare his counterattack, he draws his sword. He charges toward the man. Using the power of his sword, he launches an aura attack. However, the white-haired man deflects it with his hand. The impact of the deflected aura hits the ground behind him, exploding the area. Jiyomo lands in front of the man. He thinks that the man is as strong as he had imagined. At that moment, the white-haired man charges toward our hero. They stare at each other for a moment. Jiyomo then uses his 10 swords technique. The swords advance toward the man. The man, in turn, deflects them using only his martial arts. Jiyomo realizes the extent of his skill. With his eyes glowing and a grim expression, he thrusts his sword toward his attacker's face. The man is startled. He retreats to avoid the blow. The white-haired man lands. His attacker tells him that he is skilled enough to dodge his attacks, which is impressive, and asks where he is from. Jiyomo thinks and realizes they don't know he is from the Great Master's castle, so he says he is just the head of a small family. His attacker becomes irritated, feeling as though he is going through all this trouble just to kill the head of a small family. He leaps and charges toward our hero, launching multiple attacks. Our protagonist thinks that this man is very strong and that he won't be able to defeat him alone with his current skills. He plans to buy time until he can use his 10 swords technique again, channeling the power of lightning into his sword. The man shouts that this attack is ridiculous, but Jiyomo remains focused on his strike. His sword meets the hand of the white-haired man. The clash disperses the surrounding environment with the power of the attack. The man steps back, surprised. Taking advantage of the opening, our hero readies his sword and slashes at his shoulder. The adversary screams, calling him a scoundrel. He tries to punch him, but Jiyomo is already prepared and launches another attack. At that moment, a man appears between the two. Jiyomo looks at a man with a mustache and dark clothing. He realizes that the man blocked the attack from the white-haired man using the power of his sword. The man tells him to be cautious. The white-haired man apologizes. The man with the mustache continues, saying that now is not the time for games, and the long-haired man kneels. The protagonist thinks that this man is also part of the Sangmari group. Now looking at our hero, the mustached man orders them to leave. The man with the mustache leaps into the air and the protagonist shouts for them to stop. However, the long-haired man looks at Jiyomo and says that the next time they meet, he will kill him. And with that, he vanishes from his sight. Our hero thinks that this situation is terrible because he had the perfect chance to kill that man. Sheathing his sword, he reflects on how they disappeared, confirming that the Sangmari group is planning something. At the temple of the competition, where the battles will take place, Jiyomo hasn't forgotten his mission to find urine. He continues to think that he doesn't know what the Sangmari group is planning, but completing his mission as quickly as possible will help him. Jiyomo looks through the crowd, feeling anxious. He spots a man. He realizes that it will be problematic if those guards see him. Jiyomo tries to hide among the crowd. He observes the Archduke and his soldiers searching for information, and notices that they also seem to have not found urine. Trying to avoid any commotion, he decides to use a tracking spell. Jiyomo makes a seal with his hands while applying clairvoyance around him. A thread emerges from the protagonist's clothing. It goes towards the Archduke's clothing, entering from behind his cape. The protagonist says that this way he will know where Jaehyun is at any moment. Jiyomo blends into the crowd. In another location, someone is playing a type of drum. We can see a crowd cheering as they watch the championship. A man in red welcomes everyone to the martial arts championship, saying that they should all eagerly await a great spectacle. The crowd cheers at the man's words. The former commander judges that based on the fourth princess's personality, she was probably at the front. The man announces that they will start the first battle, and that the first contestant is from a Murim family, Hayag Ryan Pyoen. After the announcement, the challenger begins to walk through the arena. He announces that his rival will be a man shrouded in mystery, eager to win the competition. The young master of fusion, Bak Yuchen, Ryan Pyoen, glares at him, irritated. He reciprocates the look towards his rival. The referee raises his finger and announces that the competition will begin. We can see the fourth princess happy that it is finally starting. The man next to her says that Ryan Pyoen is his grandson. The fourth princess says he must be a great-grandson. Smiling, the man confirms what she said. Ryan Pyoen tells his opponent that he will let him attack first. Bak Yuchen says he won't refuse. He charges forward, holding his sword. The first challenger jumps back, dodging his attack. Mocking his rival, he asks if that's all he has, and it seems everything will end quickly. Suddenly, he charges forward. Swinging his sword, he unleashes a powerful attack called the Disastrous Swordsman. Bak Yuchen looks at him with determination. He attacks again, but his opponent also strikes at the same time. Jiyomo thinks that this is a true swordsman, using his sword as he pleases. Ryan Pyoen narrowly dodges his opponent's attack. He steps back to gain some distance. Looking at his rival, he acknowledges his skill with the sword. But Bak Yuchen says that the first challenger is setting him free. Suddenly, while shouting, the first challenger leaps, saying that no matter what, he is no match for a true swordsman. The boy shouts that this is the Fortune Dragon's sword art. They clash swords, with Bak Yuchen kneeling to withstand the impact. He continues defending against the other competitor's attacks with great difficulty. The man delivering the blows keeps going relentlessly. They continue exchanging blows while moving across the arena. The second challenger, clearly exhausted, looks at his rival. He crouches down, attempting to strike his opponent's legs. The man who had been attacking up until now is startled by this move. He distances himself from his rival once again. But now his opponent starts attacking him relentlessly, reversing the fight. At this moment, the one who was cornered and defending is the first challenger. Confused, he notices that his rival is copying his techniques. The second challenger jumps towards him. He shouts as he prepares to strike. Suddenly, his eyes glow white and he looks shocked and horrified. He falls to his knees on the ground, clutching his head. The fourth princess, watching the fight, is surprised and wonders what happened. Looking at the young man, she questions what could have happened to his head. But before he can recover, Ryan Pyoen attacks him. He counterattacks, trying to land a blow. But again, his eyes glow white. He stops the attack and grabs his head. The fourth princess thinks these movements are very strange. Suddenly, the man next to her murmurs something. Her attention is drawn to the man who is making a seal with his hands. She pulls on his clothes. Extremely irritated, the fourth princess asks if the old man is interfering with the fight. Angrily, she says the old man is ruining her family's reputation. The old man nervously asks what she's talking about. A crowd of people gathers around them, as the fourth princess accuses the old man of cheating. The old man, trying to get out of the situation, asks why she's making up lies. Thanks to all the commotion caused by the fourth princess, Jiyomo finally manages to find her. Relieved, he thinks that he found her, but due to her being dressed as a man, it was very difficult for him. A little later, with the competition fight interrupted, someone is greeting Yurin. The man in red thanks the fourth princess for finding the cheater. She says she just did what was necessary. The man politely asks for her name. A little nervous, she gives a false name to the man while saying she is leaving. She leaves the place she was and heads towards the street. But suddenly, the former commander calls her, leaving her surprised. Nervous and embarrassed, she calls him by his name. Politely, he says they should return together. She asks how Jiyomo recognized her even though Jaehyun himself did not. He says that with a personality as unique as hers, it would be impossible not to recognize. The princess asks what he will do now that he has found her. He responds that, as she might suspect, they must return to the Grandmaster's castle and notify the Archduke. She begs him not to do so since the martial arts competition has barely started. He informs her that there are people from the bloodthirsty group there and that it would be dangerous. Yurin asks if that is true and if it wouldn't mean they are working on something. This leaves Jiyomo a little confused. Elsewhere, the white-haired warrior is talking to a man. This man is the first lieutenant of the Shadow Dragon's troop, informing him about his discovery regarding who was behind the Hao family. Bai Hewol, surprised and curious, asks who this person might be. The man says it is the Moyang family and that they apparently are after their plans. The white-haired, excited, asks if they shouldn't catch them before anything goes wrong. The lieutenant, understanding his superior's intentions, asks if he should prepare. Stretching carelessly, the man looks at his subordinate and says they will go tonight. Night finally falls. Dozens of men from the bloodthirsty group are running through the forest. Reaching the Moyang family residence, the men position themselves on the rooftops. The white-haired, who was leading the men, notices the residence and sees a shadow at the window. It was Moyang's COG, who was writing a letter about the Spear Dragon competition conspiracy. She suggests that to prevent anything from happening, it would be ideal for everyone to gather and discuss the matter. But suddenly, Bai Hewol jumps in front of her. Confident, he begins to smile. But suddenly, a sort of dagger flies in his direction. He senses the object approaching. Bai Hewol ducks and dodges while looking back, searching for who threw it. It was an old man who asks who that man is and how he dared to enter the Moyang family's territory. Confused, Suja comes out and asks what is happening. The old man informs her that there are intruders and that she must alert the White Sword troops as quickly as possible. She grabs a kind of whistle and puts it in her mouth. The old man advances to attack the white-haired intruder, saying he will kill him. Bai Hewol laughs, saying that he is the one who should be saying something like that. The old man becomes even more irritated. He throws several blades towards the intruder, who easily defends them with his hands. While the white-haired defends himself from the old man's attacks, Bai Hewol claims that none of these attacks work against him. But then Suji appears, surrounded by several soldiers. In response, the lieutenant positions himself with his men. Annoyed, the lieutenant orders his men to capture the woman. She begins to prepare for battle, removing her belt. Suji positions herself as if the belt were a whip. At that moment, the bloodthirsty group leaps towards them, and thus begins the battle with the Moyang soldiers. One of the bloodthirsty group men tries to attack the woman who positions herself with her belt. Suddenly, she delivers a blow towards the man, who, with no chance of defense, ends up dead. The lieutenant says that, as expected, she is no ordinary person. He runs towards her, attempting to attack her. She promptly counterattacks, anticipating his move. However, the man manages to dodge all of her attacks. Suji is surprised and clearly exhausted. With a smile on his face, he brandishes his sword, managing to wrap her whip around his sword, leaving her surprised by his feat. He feels confident with what he has just done, crouching and pulling Suji along with her whip. We see a frenzied sequence of attacks. It was a fight between the lord of the Moyang family and the white-haired intruder. Smiling, he says that even though the Moyang reputation isn't the best, they truly are not so bad at martial arts. The old man becomes even more irritated, asking what he is talking about. The old man advances again against the intruder. Bai Hewol prepares to strike him. He extends his arm, attempting to land a punch on the old man, which leaves him completely surprised. The punch hits him squarely, lifting him up. The old man is thrown far away, but suddenly, somehow, the force seems to have doubled, and it starts to throw him even farther and faster. Suji sees the old man pass by her and calls him Noya. The lieutenant, irritated, says that she is not in a position to worry about others. He begins to emit a red aura while holding his sword with the belt wrapped around it. Suddenly, the belt explodes. Losing her balance, Suji asks how this is possible. The lieutenant tries to stab her with his sword. With great effort, the woman manages to dodge her opponent's sword. With a crazed look, the man says he tried to be gentle, but she is making him angry. He positions himself again to attempt another attack on her. Using what's left of her whip, she manages to stop his attack. Below the force of the impact, the belt causes friction on her hand, making her start to bleed. The warrior of the Moyang family was clearly exhausted and in pain. Applying even more force, the lieutenant says that she won't be able to stop his sword for long. He pushes harder, even shouting as he searches for strength to break the whip. After that, the belt finally breaks. She closes her eyes, accepting her fate. But suddenly, a blade interrupts the lieutenant's attack, and that blade belongs to Jomo. She looks up, incredulous that he is there. The lieutenant, confused, asks who this guy is. Looking at him, the protagonist says he is there to do business with the Moyan family and did not expect such hostility. Suddenly, the leader of the bloodthirsty group lands in front of the lieutenant. He stares at the former commander while the old man's body lies on the ground. Not much different from him. Countless soldiers of the Moyan family lie lifeless on the ground. The man says they have met again sooner than expected and that his opponent is seeking his own death. Extremely irritated, the white-haired man gives the order to kill Jiyomo. All the soldiers of the bloodthirsty group charge towards the man to attack him. One of them tries to make the first strike, but only the movement of the former commander's blade can be seen. The soldier cannot even comprehend what cut him as his head is severed from his body. Jiyomo looks at the men as a lightning bolt comes from his eye. He begins to brandish his sword as if creating multiple others. They go towards the soldiers. They don't even have a chance to defend themselves, and in the blink of an eye, all of them are dead. The former commander thinks these must be the effects of his daily training. Terrified by Hewell questions what those movements were and how they resembled those of a monster. The lieutenant leaps towards the mysterious hero, saying he will not stand idle. He prepares to deliver a downward strike. The mysterious hero simply looks at him. He effortlessly defends the lieutenant's attack. The man is shocked at how easily Jiyomo blocked his attack. The hero begins to unleash a sequence of strikes against him. Astonished by such strength, with great difficulty, he starts to dodge the attacks. But even with all his effort, some of the attacks still hit him, making the lieutenant even more shocked and afraid. The man looks at the lieutenant, irritated by his audacity. He throws several blades towards his enemy while gaining some distance. The lieutenant, startled, prepares to defend the attack, managing to deflect some. As the lieutenant is still recovering after blocking the attack, Jiyomo wonders if he really managed to defend against it. But then the lieutenant is caught off guard as the blades he just defended against begin to return. They strike him from behind, and unable to block them, he ends up being hit by several. The man can only scream in pain. The white-haired man mentally affirms that his lieutenant is no match for the mysterious hero. Suddenly, an attack comes from behind Jiyomo. He senses the attack and looks back. With a quick movement, he manages to defend against the attack. Behind him, a massive explosion occurs due to the impact. With sarcasm, the former commander says it's quite suspicious that they are chasing a woman like true dogs. As he positions himself to launch another attack, the white-haired man says it's none of his business. Suddenly, the man shouts, "Demonic blood flow." With that, 2 wind vortexes are launched in front of him. They head at full force towards Jiyomo. With a stern look, he says they are impressive tricks. But with relative ease, he cuts through the wind. They split, causing explosions around him from the impact. Bai Hewell curses him as he charges towards him. Pointing his sword at his enemy, the former commander says he should not be called his opponent. The enraged man prepares another strike and launches it towards the hero. Jiyomo charges towards his enemy, slicing his attack in half once again, causing explosions. He unleashes a sequence of attacks on his enemy, who only defends himself. He tries to stab his enemy. His opponent is surprised by the movement, but he cannot defend in time and ends up with a scratch on his face. He panics when he sees his face bleeding. Pointing his sword at Bai Hewell, the former commander asks what he will do now that his face is scratched. As he prepares to launch the same vortex attack, the man asks who Jiyomo really is to have improved his skills so much in such a short time. He unleashes a barrage of attacks, but as expected, the former commander also counterattacks. He continues to fend off his enemy's attacks while trying to get closer to him. When he finally gets close enough, the hero simply looks at his enemy and smiles. Again, he launches a series of attacks, and this time, with no room to defend, the white-haired man ends up taking all of them. Using his last strength, the man turns to Jiyomo and curses him again. Preparing to deliver the final blow, the former commander tells him to stop talking nonsense as now is the time for his death. But surprisingly, the lieutenant steps in front of his attack. He yells for all his men to protect the captain. Without showing any discomfort or surprise, the hero just looks at the man. He strikes 2 blows, each cutting off one of the man's arms. The man screams in pain as he falls to the ground. When the former commander looks up, 3 soldiers are already trying to attack him. Seeing this, he realizes that no matter how many he kills, there always seem to be more. He begins to brandish his sword. By the end of his attack, all of his opponents are lying on the ground. He quickly approaches their captain. He delivers a blow with all his rage and fury. But somehow, he does not cut the captain. Instead, he hits one of the soldiers. He notices that Bai Hewell is using his own subordinates as shields. Right behind him, the captain is desperately trying to flee. The captain looks back to make sure the former commander is not following him. Jiyomo concludes that cleaning up this mess is more important than pursuing the captain at this moment. Approaching Seojae, he asks if she is okay. With tears in her eyes, she says the name of the lord of her family. Meanwhile, in another location, a candle illuminates the inside of a house. Jiyomo, along with Seojae and the old man, are inside a room. The former commander has his hand over the old man's chest while emitting an aura. He breathes heavily as he concentrates. After accomplishing what he intended, he removes his hand, still surrounded by an aura. He informs them that the old man will wake up soon and Seal thanks him. She asks if he is part of the Grand Master's castle. Without directly answering, he asks how she figured that out. She says that the Moyan family's ability to gather information is exceptional and asks how he found that place. Jiyomo explains that the 4th princess sent him there to discover the bloodthirsty group's plans. She praises his skills and says they need the help of the Grand Master's castle. Someone is leaping from rooftop to rooftop, moving as fast as possible to reach a destination. It was the former commander himself. himself, determined to inform Yuran as quickly as possible about the bloodthirsty group's plans. He remembers that Seal informed him that the bloodthirsty group's plan is to start a war against the Grand Master's castle by kidnapping promising young members from other families so they cannot oppose the group. He confesses that even if he doesn't want to, he will have to engage in this conflict to prevent it from escalating into a civil war. He quickly lands in a courtyard. Entering the room, the former commander searches for the fourth princess. Realizing that no one is there, he feels a bit nervous, wondering where she could have gone, saying that this is urgent. Satisfied, he admits it was a good idea to have used clairvoyance on her. Jiyomo notices her presence is nearby. In the city at night, the princess is protecting a child behind her. A man with a knife in hand, along with two companions, tells the fourth princess that if she doesn't want to get hurt, he recommends she leave as quickly as possible. She curses them, saying that they made this child into a thief. Attempting to attack her, the man tells her not to regret what she said. He strikes at her, but the fourth princess simply ducks. The man is surprised as he did not expect Yuran to dodge. She stands up and hits him. The man flies backward, bleeding heavily from his mouth. He crashes into the wall with great force, creating a hole as he drops his knife. The man's companion attacks her, asking if she knows who they are. The princess easily dodges the attack again. She says she knows who they are as she strikes a blow to his shoulder. The man screams in pain as his shoulder twists and he can barely move his hand. The third companion tells her not to move, which surprises Yuran. The man with a blade to the boy's neck says that if she moves, he will kill him. Annoyed, she calls them human scum. While making a hand seal, the fourth princess admits that it wouldn't be hard to kill them, but it's too risky with a child who could get hurt. The man mocks her, telling her to just obey. Suddenly, something moves like the wind. When the man finally realizes what happened, his head is already severed. It was a former commander who angrily says that once again the princess is involved in controversial matters. A bit tired from the fight, the fourth princess says that these people were the ones who started it. The man she had thrown against the wall takes advantage of her distraction to try attacking her again. But once more, Yuran dodges effortlessly. However, Jiyomo then charges at the man. He pierces him with his sword. The man doesn't understand how this person managed to move so quickly. Still filled with fear, the thief begins to cough up blood. He falls to the ground lifeless. Jiyomo looks at the princess and tells her to never hesitate to dirty her sword. A bit embarrassed, she says that's not the problem. She admits to herself that her biggest fear was the child getting hurt. The child was crying, scared and frightened by everything that had happened. Yuran says she will take him to the Grand Master's castle so he can be safe. Looking at her, extremely serious, the former commander says he has something to tell her. Confused by what he is saying, Yuran looks at him. Meanwhile, at the bloodthirsty group's headquarters, the white-haired man is being slapped. An older-looking man slaps him and stares at him. Extremely irritated, the Celestial Master's son, now named Talmuk, says that Bai Hewol led the Shadow Dragon group into danger and came back alone. With his head slightly lowered, the white-haired man informs him that a mysterious man appeared suddenly. Talmuk slaps him again. Angry at the boy's excuses, he calls him incompetent. As the Celestial Master's son glares at the boy, he lowers his head, saying he will kill that man. The man remains irritated, but a hand reaches out to him. It was a woman asking the man to give the boy another chance. Looking at Bai Hewol, she asks if he wouldn't kill himself if he failed again. Looking at the boy, Talmuk says that this time he must go with Yul Gunchuk. The boy bows, thanking her for the second chance. Angrily, Bai Hewol looks at the woman, thinking she is truly succeeding in manipulating Talmuk. Meanwhile, in another place, a group of people is seated around a table. Suddenly, two people enter through the door. It was the Archduke of the Grand Master's castle along with his sister. Seujia introduces herself as a member of the Moyang family and says she has been expecting them. The Archduke Jaehyun also introduces himself and says he is interested in the conspiracy involving the martial arts competition and the bloodthirsty group. She says the conspiracy is real. Jaehyun gets angry, cursing the bloodthirsty group. Seal invites everyone to take a seat first. After everyone regains their composure and sits at the table, she says that to prevent the bloodthirsty group from causing more problems, it must unite and stop them. The young master of the Jaegle family says that he has also been keeping an eye on the bloodthirsty group recently. The deputy from the Pang family says she doesn't understand why the bloodthirsty group is acting now. The Archduke concludes that they probably don't know that the Grand Master's castle has stolen a secret book from the bloodthirsty group. The young master of the Huangbo family says he has also thought about this and that perhaps they are worrying unnecessarily. The representative of the Pang family says that if they really managed to kidnap many people, they wouldn't have anywhere to hide them. A member of the Nangong family says they should not underestimate the influence of the bloodthirsty group. Extremely irritated, the representative of the Huangbo family says that doesn't make any sense. But suddenly, a man is thrown into the room. The one who had thrown the soldier was Jiyomo. All the representatives stand and draw their swords. Seujia says that this man is on their side. She says that, as expected, the bloodthirsty group is following them. He informs them that he killed everyone except the person leading them. Yuran, who was accompanying her brother, asks where the man had been following them from. The former commander informs her that apparently they were hiding within the Pang family's convoy. The representative of the Pang family, frightened and nervous, begins to deny his accusations. Looking at the man on the ground, he merely states that it isn't important at the moment. Jiyomo grabs the man on the ground, staring at him. Suddenly, he delivers several quick blows to the man's body. He demands the man tell him everything he knows. The man bites down on something in his mouth. Jiyomo, surprised by the man's action, realizes it might be a poison pill. He grabs the man's throat, making him spit out the pill. Looking at the man, the former commander says he won't let him die easily and will make him reveal where their hideout is. The man begs him to kill him. As he prepares to strike the man again, he remarks that he suspected it wouldn't be so easy. Jiamo begins to deliver a series of blows to the man's body once again. Even with numerous bruises, the man still says he won't reveal anything easily. The former commander realizes something that leaves him shocked. He turns, telling everyone to evacuate the area as quickly as possible, while the man behind him begins to swell. He leaps, trying to escape the explosion caused by the man. The princess, surprised, tries to shield herself from the explosion. Jiamho runs desperately. He grabs her, trying to protect her. Fragments of the man fly in all directions. He places his hand on the hilt of his weapon. Drawing it, he destroys all the fragments heading their way. He admits to the princess that he had no idea the man could explode. Embarrassed, the princess pulls away from him. After the incident, they approach the site of the explosion. The Archduke, outraged, says that Jiamo was a horrible person, but the representative of the Nambang family says this is not the best time for them to argue. The young master of the Damok family agrees and asks if the Moyang family has anything in mind. Seojai suggests that the best option would be to cancel the martial arts competition, but Javel Haiyan says the students will likely not allow such a thing. Hesitantly, she says that if this happens, the Archduke encourages her, saying she doesn't need to hesitate to say it. Determined, Moyang says that in that case, it must create panic among the public before the bloodthirsty group does, thus disrupting the martial arts competition. They are surprised by Moyang's plan. The representative of the Javel family agrees that it would be very effective, but also extremely dangerous. Nangbang Yusong says they could even be expelled. She states that they will have to use another method based on the demonic soul vigil. The young master of the Nanbang family asks if it really would be the demonic soul vigil. A member of the Dongbang family explains that the vigil is a bell that always rings when an evil energy approaches. Jagal Haiyan agrees that this would be the best option at the moment. Dongbang Seong announces that the competition will begin tomorrow. They all look in one direction, determined, in the city. As many people walk around and shop, Jaehyun, along with the princess and Jeomho, walks through the streets. He tells the fourth princess that she must return tomorrow as quickly as possible, which doesn't make her very happy. And he instructs the former commander to accompany her to the Grand Master's castle as quickly as possible tomorrow. Yurin tells her brother to stop treating her like a child. He holds her shoulders, saying that he is not treating her like a child, but that he fears something might happen to her. Looking away, the princess says she has things to resolve and that she won't be able to leave tomorrow. Suspicious, he asks what those things are that she needs to resolve. She says she has a child she wants to take with her to the Grand Master's castle and that she will take the child's family as well. He breathes a sigh of relief, saying that's fine. She asks if Jeomho will go with her, to which he simply nods affirmatively. She looks at him and ends up smiling. The next day, the crowd goes wild with the fights. They shout the names of the competitors, cheering for them. One of the spectators says that Xiam Sarin will win, and another calls it absurd. While everyone is excited about the fights, the representative of the Jagal family walks through the crowd anxiously and meets another representative. It was Huangbo Zhongwu. All the representatives were there, including Hajong, the deputy representative of the Pang family. Suddenly, a bell rings. The fight is so intense that no one notices. One of the competitors continues striking his rival. Unlike him, his opponent remains extremely calm. Suddenly, when one of the competitors strikes his opponent, he elegantly defends. Then he immediately prepares to counterattack. He unleashes a sequence of blows, forcing his opponent onto the defensive. While everyone fervently cheers for the fight, the Archduke stands among the crowd, merely observing his surroundings. The bell rings again. He wonders if it is reacting to the evil energy, but in any case, there are too many people around to identify it. Unexpectedly, a massive explosion occurs in the arena, causing the platform to tremble. This leaves everyone extremely shocked and silences all the cheers. Jaehyun turns around, extremely surprised and nervous, wondering what is happening. Another large explosion rocks the arena, this time powerful enough to completely destroy it. Everyone begins to run frantically, trying to escape the arena. The representative of the Jagal family wonders what is happening. The Archduke questions if this explosion was the work of the Moyan family. But another explosion happens again, this time at the exit of the stage. A person in the crowd begins removing their clothing, revealing that they are actually from the bloodthirsty group. When people finally realize what's happening, they notice he's not alone. Dozens of soldiers begin leaping among the crowd. They land on the walls, as people start asking if this is the bloodthirsty group. One of the men in the crowd questions whether the soldiers think everything will be fine after what they have done. But suddenly, someone emerges from the rubble. Landing gracefully is an older man who, with only one leg, manages to balance on a piece of broken wood. With black eyes, the man warns that if they don't shut up, he will throw a bomb at them all. Jaehyun is confused, wondering what is happening. The young master Dongbang Seong, surprised, says he didn't suspect the bloodthirsty group would take the crowd hostage. Damak Gyua notes that they are always one step ahead. The man introduces himself as Jin Yobang, the second blood spirit of the bloodthirsty group, and declares that if any young masters wish to save lives, they must follow them. Some nobles begin to ask where they would have to go, nervous about what might happen. The Archduke telepathically orders his soldiers to go to his sister. They confirm his order telepathically. He instructs them to hurry and inform the Grand Master's castle branch about the current danger. They accept his command and begin to use a technique to move stealthily. Irritated, the man asks if no one will volunteer and warns that if he calls again and no one comes, they will start killing people one by one. This causes all the residents and civilians to become nervous and fearful. The Blood Spirit begins calling out the name of the Jaegal family representative, shouting boldly. One of the bloodthirsty group's men lands in the middle of the crowd. He grabs a man by his clothes while holding his sword in the other hand. The man begs the young master to go with the bloodthirsty group. Suddenly, Jin Yobang begins counting down from 3 to 1. But the young master of the Jaegal family steps forward from the crowd, saying there's no need to continue. With a determined look, he says he will accompany them. With him, all the other representatives of noble families appear. The man smiles and says they should have done this sooner. In another part of the city, the princess along with Jeomho and the child are heading to his home. The boy says they've arrived at the place. He runs towards the door, calling out for his mother. The worried mother asks where he has been as she coughs heavily, clearly unwell. The boy excitedly tells his mother that they won't have to live in that place anymore, while she looks confused at the presence of strangers in her home. Concerned, Yurin thinks the woman might collapse at any moment. Suddenly, something catches her attention. She goes to the boy's mother, saying she brought dumplings for her. The mother asks who this woman is and why she's giving them such good food. The princess explains that Jaeyoung stole her wallet. The mother looks confused and nervous at what the woman just told her, and the boy becomes afraid of his mother's reaction. As the boy's mother scolds him, the former commander watches them from a distance. Suddenly, he senses something approaching. He places his hand on his sword, unaware that the person behind him is one of the guards the Archduke had ordered to go to them. Jeomho places his sword at the guard's neck, asking who he is, leaving the guard surprised that he could sense his presence. A little nervous about the situation, the man says he was sent by the Archduke and that at this very moment, the bloodthirsty group has taken over the competition hall. The princess turns, asking if her brother is okay. Several carriages sent by the bloodthirsty group members arrive while the young masters await orders. The blood spirit commands everyone to hurry and get into the carriages. Several darts are inserted into the hands of the young masters. They are also forced to drink a type of potion. The young master of the Huangbo family asks what they are being forced to drink. With a punitive look, the blood spirit says it would be better for them to quietly comply if they don't want the civilians to suffer. As a convoy of carriages takes the young masters out of the city, the members of the bloodthirsty group look around, ensuring that nothing goes off plan. The Archduke, disguised among the members of the bloodthirsty group, wonders where they are going and how long he can remain hidden. Inside one of the carriages, all the young masters are together. Huangbo Zhangwu asks if any of them have an idea of what they were forced to drink. Jaegal Haiyan suspects that it might be mountain poison. The young master of the Nambang family complains that he no longer feels energy in his body. Meanwhile, the representative of the Damak family says they are draining their energy and turning them into puppets. Jaegal Haiyan tells everyone to calm down and try to gather as much internal energy as they can. He tries his best, straining himself and clearly feeling pain and discomfort. All of them, extremely exhausted, eventually give up. They finally arrive at the bloodthirsty group's hideout. The Archduke grows nervous as they arrive. As the convoy continues, shadows can be seen trailing behind them. It was the protagonist along with the fourth princess. She, surprised as she never imagined there would be a bloodthirsty group branch in Luoyang. The former commander states that not everything is as it seems. Furious, the princess asks how Jeomho knew her brother's location in real time. He informs her that he placed a tracking spell on Jahian some time ago. Finding this suspicious, the princess asks if he placed one on her as well. The protagonist simply ignores her while leading dozens of soldiers into battle. He says they'll talk about it later, but for now, the priority is to rescue all the young masters. After his signal, all the soldiers begin scaling the wall of the bloodthirsty group, invading the hideout. Inside the hideout in the central courtyard, the carriages stop and the soldiers begin unloading materials. The blood spirit orders everyone to work as quickly as possible and move the cargo. While carrying a sack of supplies, Jahian thinks this must be a food cart and wonders how he can alert the others. Suddenly, everyone is caught off guard by a massive explosion. They begin to fall uncontrollably. The bloodthirsty group members start shouting that there are intruders among them. Lying on the ground, the Archduke wonders what just happened. Surprisingly, the former commander speeds past the Archduke like lightning, heading straight for his enemies. He is shocked by Jeomho's speed and decisive action. In the blink of an eye, a member of the bloodthirsty group is already split in half. As the protagonist surveys his surroundings, a battalion of soldiers leaps into combat against the bloodthirsty group members. He turns to the Archduke, who is still on the ground, and orders him to get up and help. The princess rushes to her brother, asking if he's okay. Surprised, he asks what she is doing there. She says that he'll talk about it later and that they need to buy time until Miss Moyan gathers all the faction troops. A member of the bloodthirsty group tries to attack her from behind, but the princess, extremely irritated, turns around. With a single strike, she severs the man's head from his body. As he draws his sword, the Archduke asks if he should start warming up. The young master, Jaegal Haiyan, asks the others what's happening outside, when suddenly the protagonist opens the door, startling them. He says he's there to save them and that they must go. The former commander cuts the bindings on the young master's hands. The representative of the Jaegal family thanks him for the assistance. They all exit the carriages and grab weapons from the fallen soldiers. The blood spirit admits he did not expect their location to be exposed. Annoyed, he says he no longer needs the hostages and that they should just kill everyone. The soldiers agree with the orders and leap into battle. They move toward the representatives of the families to attack them, but Jaegal Haiyan blocks the first attack with his sword. As the impact is too strong, he ends up falling to the ground. Jaehyun orders his sister to protect them since they have been poisoned with the mountain poison. Following her brother's order, she charges ahead. Preparing to launch an attack, she defeats all 3 warriors who went after the young ones. The Archduke is surprised by his sister's strength and wonders when she became so powerful. She looks at her brother and asks if he's not going to fight. That's when Jaehyun snaps back to reality and notices 2 warriors coming to attack him. He quickly takes an attack stance. He delivers a blow that completely cuts one of his assailants. The other warrior tries to attack him from behind with full force, but Jaehyun dodges. He observes the movement of the man attacking him, countering the strike that cuts him in half. The Archduke is startled when a blade passes close to his face. He manages to defend himself but receives a very strong impact. When he finally stops, he observes who has come to challenge him. Nervously, he wonders what this monstrous pressure he's feeling is. The protagonist looks in the direction of the fight, realizing that it's the same man who interrupted his fight with the white-haired one, an old man with a black cloak and black hair. At that moment, Gyeomo shouts for the Archduke to be careful, as this man is a master. Confident, Jaehyun takes a battle stance, saying that it's impossible. The man smiles, asking if he's afraid. It was Yul Gunchuk, the leader of the Black Mask Squad. With a determined look, the Archduke says there's no way he is afraid. A bloody battle continues on the battlefield, with many soldiers from both the Grandmaster's castle and the bloodthirsty group dead. The princess notices that no matter how many they kill, more keep appearing as if there's no end. As he cuts down various enemies, the protagonist thinks that the bloodthirsty group truly has far more warriors than expected. This excites him, making him think that now he can test his new abilities as he casts a spell. He unleashes a spell called Motion of 5 Similarities, a powerful spell that destroys everything in front of him. The attack travels a long distance, cutting down many of the bloodthirsty group warriors who don't even understand what happened. Shouting with a mix of excitement and rage, the blood spirit says that the boy is far too wild for his taste. He launches a long-range attack at him. The former commander manages to dodge, but the spot where he stood explodes completely. He begins to reflect on his last attack and notices that it is a very suitable technique for aggressive burst attacks. The blood spirit leaps toward Gyeomho, calling him arrogant. He sees the strong member of the bloodthirsty group coming at him. They start exchanging deadly blows without stopping. Both strike and block each other's attacks. The man, in extreme anger, says that if he dies, he will take Gyeomho with him. With that, his sword begins to be engulfed in flames. He resumes attacking, trying to close the distance between them. The former commander dodges all the blows with relative ease, but he notices that he's being cornered against the wall. The man yells that this will be the end as he strikes. The protagonist looks at his opponent while his eyes glow, lightning flashing from them. Suddenly, their swords clash, causing a massive explosion where they are, sending fragments flying across the courtyard. The blood spirit is surprised that his blade was stopped, and even more so that his sword is now cracked. They both take distance from each other. Yul Gunchuk is completely exhausted and also has some wounds. The protagonist calmly looks at his cloak, which is on fire. Indifferently, he extinguishes the flames with his bare hand. As he removes his cloak, he asks if that's all the blood spirit has and says it's now his turn. The former commander charges at his opponent, preparing to strike. With just one movement, he unleashes multiple attacks, forcing the blood spirit to stay on the defensive. He determinedly continues attacking without stopping for even a moment. Yul Gunchuk, with a mix of nervousness and excitement, just watches his opponent. Suddenly, something comes toward the former commander. It leaves him surprised and confused by what's approaching. He defends himself with great effort, even surprising the blood spirit. Gyeomho is knocked far away. He uses his legs and sword to brace himself against the ground, spitting a little blood to the side as he looks at his new opponent. It's revealed to be the white-haired man greeting his old friend. The protagonist is surprised, asking if it's really him. The former commander recalls the face of Bai Howol. Looking at him again, his face bears a large scar and he is visibly much older. Surprised and shocked by what he's seeing, Gyeomho asks what happened to his face. While invoking a spell, the man says that he used the wall of the water spirit to evolve. As he runs to attack, the man says he is no longer the one the former commander faced. The blood spirit also charges forward. Both attack the protagonist together, who was extremely irritated by this. At the same moment, the Archduke was fighting his opponent while struggling hard to defend against his attacks. Besides Yul Gunchuk, there were still 2 more members of the bloodthirsty group. Jaehyun thinks that if he uses the Thunder and Wind sword, they will definitely discover that he is from the Grandmaster's castle, barely dodging the attack from one of his adversaries. He thinks he has no other choice after all, there are too many enemies. The Archduke begins to summon his Thunder sword, but his sister shouts for him not to use it, which leaves him surprised. She runs fervently to his side, managing to defeat one of her brother's opponents. The leader of the Black Masks calls them bastards as he faces both. She speaks telepathically that if they find out they are from the Grandmaster's castle, they will come after them like bees. Jaehyun simply agrees. They charge at Yul Gunchuk, who simply tells them to come at him. In the fight between Gyeomho and his 2 opponents, he was defending against both of their strikes. However, Bai Howol becomes even more irritated, along with his companion, who is frustrated at not even being able to touch him. The former commander starts to get surprised by the fact that, for the first time during this battle, he suffered an injury, concluding that only the sword won't help him win, and that he will need to use some magical tricks to deal with his enemies. Confusing the 2, he uses a technique to distance himself, creating multiple clones of himself. They are astonished by such a high-level technique. In front of them, there were at least a dozen Gyeomho clones. Jin Yobang, surprised, says this is madness. The protagonist says that his master's technique is not limited to sword skills. The white-haired man, angry, asks how he dares use such sorcery in front of him. As he prepares to launch an attack, Jiyomo says that it is not sorcery, except in the eyes of the man. The clones simultaneously begin launching various attacks in the air. The adversaries are surprised, not knowing what to do. With great difficulty, they begin to defend against the attacks. Even the blood spirit was completely horrified by such a technique. Unexpectedly, a blade cuts the other side of the white-haired man's face. Trying to launch another attack, he says that either way, he welcomes the protagonist. He attacks while telling the former commander to die, throwing some daggers in his direction. With this attack, he manages to destroy some of the protagonist's clones. While preparing another attack, he shouts, saying he will wipe them all out. He unleashes wind blasts that resemble blades, managing to hit some of the clones, but many manage to dodge. The real one runs between the explosions, preparing to launch an attack. Looking at his opponent, he asks if it was just for these martial arts that he sold his youth. The former commander then tries to attack him. The white-haired man is surprised by the protagonist's strength. Furiously, he stares at his opponent while striking him, generating a series of attacks that pierce through him. In the blink of an eye, Bai Howell was completely wounded, blood gushing out. He falls to his knees in front of the former commander. Looking at his rival, Jiyomo says it would have been better if the white-haired man had forgotten everything and just lived a normal life. While bleeding from his mouth, he musters his strength to ask who the protagonist really is. Without answering his question, he simply delivers the final blow, causing blood to spray everywhere. He turns his attention to his second rival, a blood spirit, who was facing two of his clones. Suddenly, the clones begin to dissolve, surprising his opponent. Jin Yobang, clearly exhausted, smiles nervously as he looks ahead. In front of him was the former captain, holding Bai Howell's head as he walked toward him, saying that this is the end. The blood spirit is completely terrified and begins to retreat. He looks at the other members while telling Jiyomo to stop. The blood spirit starts screaming desperately, asking his warriors to stop the protagonist. His warriors, filled with fear, are paralyzed, while the former commander looks at them all as if their lives are about to end. The Archduke, looking at the former commander, wonders how he mastered such techniques. Yurin, who is fighting by his side, angrily asks what her brother is looking at. While blocking Yul Dunchuk's attack, her brother runs toward them, trying to deliver an attack. However, the leader of the Black Masks manages to block both of their attacks simultaneously. Suddenly surprising the great warrior, the Archduke appears behind him, managing to strike his shoulder. With the sword still in his shoulder, the warrior turns angrily, trying to attack while the Archduke is still in the air. Still in the air with great effort, the Archduke manages to dodge his head away from the cut, leaving only a small wound. When attacking the Archduke, he turned his back on the princess, who took the opportunity to grab the sword lodged in his shoulder. She holds it with both hands to make sure she can pull it out. The warrior, understanding what she intends to do, becomes scared and nervous. Yurin shouts as she puts all her strength into pulling the sword out. She pulls the sword upward, cutting the warrior's shoulder, who screams in pain, and falls to his knees on the ground with his shoulder cut. The princess looks at the warrior as he falls to the ground. Her brother, with a small cut on his face, says that his sister is truly crazy. Looking at her brother, Yurin reminds him that she told him to never hesitate. As the former commander approaches Jin Yobang, the man feels cornered and asks what the protagonist really is. Jiyomo says the warrior doesn't need to know that, but if he answers all his questions, he might be spared. He feels confused but afraid, not knowing what to do. Suddenly, numerous elders land behind the former commander along with Moyan. She, worried, asks if Jiyomo is okay. He responds that he is. With this, we can see the state of the battlefield, with many elders surrounding the blood spirit, while Bai Howell's body lies on the ground. Jin Yobang laments mentally as he looks around and finds himself surrounded. He looks over the battlefield, seeing all of his soldiers dead, including Yul Gunchuk. The warrior also sees the head of the white-haired one lying on the ground. Realizing there is no escape, he asks what questions the protagonist wants to know. Jiyomo asks the blood spirit if behind the elder, there is also a woman with power, which confuses the man. Jin Yobang asks the former commander if he is referring to the woman from the third blood group. The protagonist asks what the name of the man who took her there it is. He calls the elder Talmuk. The former commander says he will not kill the warrior as he leaves. He turns his head and says the spirit must survive on its own now. Suddenly, all the elders point their swords at him, leaving Jin Yobang surprised. The man realizes he has been tricked as he sees the elders pointing their swords at him. Angrily, he calls the protagonist Amundo. As the former commander retreats, we can see the blood spirit fighting the other elders. The princess approaches him, asking if he's okay. He responds again that he is. But Jiyomo looks irritated at a voice laughing. It was Jin Yobang, who says he now understands why he asked Tom Nook. With a crazed smile, he says there are no more doubts, declaring that the protagonist is from the Celestial Palace. All the elders, hearing what the warrior says, freeze as they look at him. The princess asks what the Celestial Palace is. The Archduke understands everything that happened and realizes it was probably the former commander who invaded the prison and acquired the martial arts. Confused, Moyang asks if he really was from the Celestial Palace. The former commander regrets not having killed him. Pointing at Jiyomo, he claims that now soldiers from all over Mirim probably want to kill him more than he does. He starts laughing as he celebrates his possible victory. The former commander asserts that Jin Yobang is begging to die, charging at the man determined to kill him. The two begin exchanging blows again. With overwhelming speed and strength, they continue their fight. The warrior from the bloodthirsty group says that, just as he suspected, the protagonist is nothing but a mere small dragon. The former commander says he doesn't like killing these dogs from the bloodthirsty group. The warrior from the bloodthirsty group, smiling, says that from now on, everyone will want to kill him. As he strikes, Jiyomo says that for that, they will need to be certain. The blood spirit is thrown backward by the impact. As he prepares to counterattack, the warrior says he will take the former commander with him to hell. His eyes begin to glow red. Shocked, Jiyomo asks if the man intends to use a mutual destruction pact. The man starts to emit a very strong light as the ground around him begins to crack. Even with such pressure, the protagonist merely looks at him, irritated, also invoking his aura, emitting a powerful light. The auras of both begin to collide, causing destruction and mini tornadoes. Both the Archduke and his sister are shocked by what they are witnessing, just like that Moyang and the elders as well. The maddened man commands the former commander to turn to dust. The protagonist concludes that if the blood spirit uses the mutual destruction pact, everyone will be caught and killed. The warrior launches an attack toward all of them, including Jiyomo. Jiyomo closes his eyes as he concentrates. Furious, Yobang asks what the former commander is doing. The attack was approaching him, destroying everything in its path. Suddenly, smoke appears in his place and he vanishes, reappearing in the air with black eyes. He was heading toward the warrior from the bloodthirsty group. The man, astonished, asks if he really jumped into his sea of attacks. The protagonist was being completely cut, but he did not stop, finally closing the distance between them. He was preparing to deliver the final blow to his opponent. The blood spirit was terrified by what he saw. The former commander places his feet on his chest while striking his neck. He was completely consumed by rage. The warrior could not react, only able to scream in pain. Jiyomo finally lands back on the ground while his opponent's body falls. He begins to cough up blood as the price for using his techniques. The princess runs toward him, calling his name. Moyang also shouts for him. He falls to his knees, placing his hand on his chest. Sometime later, soldiers from the Murim factions were carrying the bodies of the warriors from the bloodthirsty group. A man was checking another person's pulse. It was a doctor who was telling Dongbang Seon that he felt the presence of another poison. The young master asks if there is another poison besides the one from the mountain. Still examining the noble's pulse, he says he cannot tell which one, but he still senses a latent poison. Jigel Hyun asks if that means the poison could start spreading at any moment. The doctor says it is impossible for him to decipher at this moment. The noble then says that in the end they will still have to fight against it. The member of the Jabel family asks what could be the reason for them to have done all this. Moyan raises the possibility that they want to kill all the nobles to take control of the Murim factions. All the nobles are surprised by this possibility. Elsewhere, the princess is bandaging the protagonist's leg. Suddenly, something catches the princess's attention. It was the elders of the families looking at them with suspicion and disdain. She whispers to the former commander that it might be a good idea to plan how they will get out of this situation. She telepathically asks her brother to help Jiyomo get out of this situation. He nervously looks at them. Along with the Archduke and the princess, the protagonist heads toward Moyan and the group of young masters. He says he is leaving and is there to say goodbye. She asks where Jiyomo is going. He responds by saying he is living like the wind, so he will go wherever he pleases. The young master of the Jagel family thanks the former commander for saving him. He says it was nothing and that he is leaving now. Unexpectedly, Huangbo Zhongwu blocks his path. The warrior asks if the protagonist thinks they would let someone from the Celestial Palace leave so easily. The former commander merely looks irritated at the young master. Jigel Hyun, outraged, says that Jiyomo saved them and that they should be grateful for that. All the other young masters, including Huangbo, are left speechless. With that, the protagonist simply passes by the man. Some of the young masters watch him pass by, unsure of what to do. He starts to walk away, along with the Archduke and the princess. Now in the city of Luoyang, inside an establishment, there were several dishes on the table. Seated at the table, the Archduke asks if the former commander was really him. He asks if it doesn't seem so. With a smile, the Archduke says he looks very different from the person who stole his identity that day. Jiyomo is then surprised to find out that Jaehyun knew. The princess asks what that means and whether he really stole her brother's identity. The protagonist says that if he tells the story, the Duke would have to kill him right there. Yurin is shocked by what he says and asks what he means by that. As he extends his hand with a bottle, he asks her to take it. They toast together. He asks them to remember this toast as a farewell message. Once again, the princess is surprised and calls his name. The former commander says that the next time they meet, they will be enemies, and that if they have to point their swords at him, they should not hesitate. Jaehyun says that is true, that neither the Celestial Palace nor the Grand Master's castle can get along. Yurin slams her hand on the table, asking what they are talking about. She drinks a bit of sake again. With a mix of shame and anger, the princess says she would never fight against Jiyomo since she likes him, and she asks what farewell message he is talking about. This leaves the protagonist completely speechless. Even the Archduke is at a loss for words, but then the former commander stands up, surprising the girl. He says that they are from completely different worlds and that it would be best to sever any affection they have for each other. He turns and leaves the establishment. Before leaving, he asks them to stay safe. Jiyomo walks away, leaving the Archduke and his sister standing there. She starts crying, asking why it has to be this way. Her brother gently pats her head, trying to comfort her, not knowing what to say. At night, in a forest, the now celestial disciple was leaning against a tree with several empty bottles of drinks around him. Still drinking, he tries to convince himself that he is not in position to worry about others. He opens his eyes, recalling some moments when he saved her from the kunai, when she invited him to go to the championship together, when she kissed him on the cheek, and finally when she thanked him for saving her. Jiyomo says he cannot stay in the same place forever. As he stands up, he says he has no choice but to wander like the wind. He begins to draw his sword. The protagonist speaks, telling whoever it is to appear since he's been waiting for a long time. Suddenly, dozens of soldiers emerge from the shadows in front of him. He asks if the Mirim faction's dogs decided to come out on their own. The young master of the Huangbo family approaches, saying they are there because of the Celestial Palace's evil seed. Staring at the protagonist, he says that Jiyomo has a sharp tongue. The celestial disciple then says he never imagined his favor would be repaid in this way. The member of the Huangbo family responds, saying he is doing it for Mirim's peace. With that, he orders his soldiers to attack the disciple. Many of them attack him simultaneously. He ducks, dodging one attack. Right after, he moves to the side, dodging another. Thus, the fight continues with many soldiers attacking him simultaneously while he defends and dodges them all. The young master shouts for his soldiers to try harder to hit him. With that, Jiyomo strikes the soldiers. One of them is hit in the shoulder, another in the hand. Seeing that his soldiers are not enough, the young master charges at him, as he approaches with some of his soldiers lying injured on the ground. The protagonist observes and thinks he must avoid future direct conflicts with Mirim factions. The young master attacks fiercely, but the disciple dodges with relative ease. The young master becomes even more furious, cursing him. He raises his sword, preparing for another attack. But again, Jiyomo dodges, making him hit the ground. Taking some distance, the member of the Celestial Palace looks at him. Using one of his master's techniques, the protagonist begins to disappear in front of everyone. Extremely irritated, the young master asks how the former commander dares to use such sorcery. Huangbo Zhongwu steadies himself firmly on the ground. Right after, he dodges an attack that surprises him because he couldn't even see it. He starts looking around, searching for the disciple. As he desperately searches, the protagonist is watched from afar by some men who don't understand what's happening. One of the men watching the fight is the patriarch of the Wiji family. The patriarch says that Jiyomo should kill Huangbo. Another man observing the fight is the young master of the Wiji family. He says that only then will the Mirim alliance need their strength. Suddenly, a slightly worn sword appears. It was between the two men watching the fight. It was Jiyomo, pointing his sword at them. With a menacing look, he remains silent, just pointing his sword at them. Jiyomo asks who the man was saying he should kill. Both the man and his son are completely paralyzed. He asks if his old man used the Huangbo family and says that if this happens again, they won't leave alive. With that, the former commander jumps away and leaves. The young master of the Wiji family, angry, thinks they were sure Huangbo Zhongwu would be killed there. The old man says this won't be his last chance and invites his son to leave. Both jump away, leaving the place. Elsewhere, in the middle of a forest, the protagonist is running through the trees. He concludes that this means all the Mirim factions are already trying to get rid of him and that he needs a place to hide for a while. Jiyomo arrives at a village called Fallen Moon, where we see a man standing and two others sitting. The man standing stares at the protagonist. The one smoking does the same. As he passes by them, the protagonist repeats the village's name in his mind. He says that although everyone looks like refugees, they are wandering Mirim masters, which is why Mirim factions can easily enter there. Jiyomo climbs a staircase leading to the Hao family's property. He tells the guard that he is there to speak with Miss Soso. The soldier recognizes him and calls him the Great Warrior. The soldier cheerfully asks the protagonist to enter quickly. Jiyomo enters. Stoso, who was sitting and drinking, recognizes him and also calls him the Great Warrior. She says it's a great moment since they were just talking about him. The man who was sitting cracks a chestnut with his hands. It was an elderly man with white hair and a beard. The man asks if this is the disciple of the Celestial Palace. Soso confirms. He recalls that Yak Qianwang is a legendary assassin, confirming his suspicions that people beyond his imagination are hiding in Fallen Moon Village. Yak Qianwang continues to look at the Great Warrior. The protagonist approaches the legendary assassin and introduces himself, saying it is an honor to meet him. The man with a smile asks if he is also there to hide for a while. Jiyomo confirms the legendary assassin's suspicions, saying he also has a request for Soso. She turns her face to him and says he can ask for whatever he wants. The warrior says he needs information about a person behind one of the elders of the bloodthirsty group named Tamuok. He already knows that this person is a woman. Yak Qianwang asks the Great Warrior if there will be a bloody battle. The protagonist says he is very grateful to that woman. The legendary assassin says that if he harbors certain gratitudes and grudges, he might lose his life sooner. Reflective, Jiyomo says that even if he only lives for one day, he would like to live and die as a human. Yak Qianwang says he likes him and asks if he wouldn't listen to his request. The Great Warrior is confused and curious about what the legendary assassin has to say. Suddenly, the legendary assassin throws one of the chestnuts he was holding at the Great Warrior. The celestial disciple watches in shock as the chestnut comes his way. He manages to dodge by leaning his body back and bending his knees. Seeing the hole the chestnut made in the wall, he concludes that if it had hit his forehead, his head would likely have been split in two. Startled, he asks why the elder is behaving this way with him. Yak Qianwang tells the protagonist to take care of these as well. He starts firing several chestnuts at him. Seeing there was no way out, Jiyomo draws his sword. With black eyes, he begins to move quickly, cutting all the chestnuts in the air. He manages to slice them all without missing a single one. Soso was covering her eyes as fragments of chestnuts flew everywhere. Suddenly, the old assassin lunges toward him. But this time, he doesn't just throw chestnuts, he throws daggers. As the Great Warrior defends against all the daggers, he realizes that the legendary assassin is aiming only at his vital points. Surprisingly, one of the daggers grazes his abdomen. He notices the old assassin is in front of him. But in the blink of an eye, he is already behind the protagonist with a killing intent. He draws a dagger as he prepares to strike. Jiyomo reacts in time, turning to face his opponent. He manages to block the assassin's blade, but his sword cracks. He is shocked by the strength and speed of the assassin. The legendary assassin says that the great warrior would have died if he hadn't stopped his knife attack. Struggling to hold back his opponent's knife, he asks how this is possible. The assassin withdraws his knife and asks what the warrior thinks of it. With a slight smile, the assassin says that this is the true strength of an assassin. The warrior looks at him with a mix of irritation and fear. The man tells Jiamo that if he wants to gain more strength, he must go to the 10 temples of hell. So shocked, asks if that isn't the place that Yaqianwang couldn't get through. Curious, the protagonist asks why the assassin recommends that place. The old man says that when a new phantom assassin is born, the Great Assassin Bridge, which is currently broken, is reconnected. Looking at the great warrior, he says it is also not a bad offer for him. Jiamo thinks that he really needs a place to practice his master's techniques. He says it's fine, and he will go train. The legendary assassin laughs as he says that tomorrow he will provide a guide for him. At the headquarters of the bloodthirsty group, many people are gathered around someone seated on a kind of throne. The vice commander of the Black Mask Squad says that the Mirim factions managed to annihilate the Blood Spirit and Yul Gunshuk along with his entire troop. The supreme leader of the bloodthirsty group asks if they hadn't claimed to have a perfect plan. The first elder says that they reported the presence of a disciple from the Celestial Palace. The third elder says that, regardless, they succeeded as they contaminated all the promising youths of Mirim with the soul-corroding poison. Confused, the first elder asks what poison that would be. Taemuak says it is a latent poison that causes convulsions after a month. The supreme leader says they will proceed with the plan to awaken Marion. The second elder says that if Marion awakens, they will have to mobilize all the troops of the bloodthirsty group. Everyone present begins to say it's too early for that, and that they shouldn't proceed. However, Gu Yangxiuk's right eye shines with a red light that pierces through the room. At that moment, a black aura begins to emanate from him. Everyone kneels before the supreme leader, overwhelmed with pain. As they kneel in pain and cough up blood, they say that this is the power of the demonic aura. With the upper part of his torso completely black, he declares that he is the supreme leader, and that if he orders something, they must do it without question. The second elder says he understands while struggling with the pressure. He suppresses his aura once again. Everyone looks at the supreme leader sitting on his throne while they continue to writhe in pain on the ground. Elsewhere, a carriage is racing down a road. Inside this carriage is the protagonist, who confesses that he has been traveling for over 10 days and 10 nights without rest. The man guiding the carriage suddenly stops. Noticing this, the warrior wonders if they have arrived. The man opens the carriage door, informing him that from here on they need to go on foot. They start walking between large canyons. Jiyomo says he knows it's called the 10 Temples of Hell, but him being outside, it already looks like hell. They continue walking between the canyons. Suddenly, something surprises the celestial disciple. It is a large gate, so large that they look like ants next to it. The old man shouts, saying that a challenger has arrived. Suddenly, the gates open. The old man wishes the warrior good luck. Jiyomo thanks him. He enters through the gates. The warrior, determined, says he will see this through to the end. He sees a cabin in the forest with someone crouched by a stream. Jiyomo approaches peacefully. Suddenly, the woman notices his presence and is surprised. She looks at the protagonist standing in front of her. Positioning herself to start a fight, the woman asks who he is. Without answering, he asks who she is. Angry, she asks why he hasn't revealed his identity and says he must be an intruder. Suddenly, she throws several blades in his direction while putting more distance between them. He dodges easily. The blades hit the tree behind him. They were all shuriken. The girl throws some more blades in his direction. Convinced of her victory, she looks at him with a smile. Suddenly, the blades that were stuck in the tree start to return. The warrior notices that the blades, which have been still until now, begin to move. He dodges them with some surprise, noticing a silver wire attached to them, but they were still the ones she had just thrown. He brandishes his sword, and with one movement, he disperses the blades. However, the silver wire wraps around his sword. He is surprised that the blade is now heading directly toward his face. The celestial disciple quickly crouches to avoid the blade. The girl is shocked to see that he dodged all her attacks as he drops one of her shuriken to the ground. She becomes even more irritated. She starts throwing many shuriken in his direction. They begin flying at high speed toward the warrior, who remains still. Lightning starts to emerge from his right eye as he recites the 10 similar swords. With this, several swords appear above him. With a simple swing of his sword, they all move toward the girl's attack. His attack cuts all the silver wires that were attached to the blades. The girl becomes extremely angry as she draws a kunai. She jumps toward him, saying she will kill him, but he easily dodges. She recomposes herself. Now, instead of shuriken, she throws many kunai in his direction. He simply defends against all of them with his sword. He says he's had enough playing around. With that, he charges at the girl. While he is in the air heading towards the girl, she is surprised by the man's reaction. In a panic, she starts throwing many blades in his direction. However, he is already irritated and simply strikes against her. Jiyomo destroys all her blades. The girl cannot believe that with just one simple attack, he managed to destroy all her weapons. But suddenly, some projectiles start heading towards the girl. She closes her eyes, putting her arm in front of her face to protect herself. But then an old man appears and shields her with his own body. The old man, looking at the warrior, curses him as a scoundrel. With just a single motion of his arm, the old man disperses all the projectiles launched by the protagonist. The warrior lands on the ground while the old man stares at him. The old man introduces himself as a guardian of hell and asks if the warrior is trying to kill his disciple. Jiyomo thinks that this must be the reason she is so strong. After all, she is the disciple of the guardian of hell himself. The old man asks if he is the one Qianwang sent. The girl, confused, steps out from behind her master, asking if someone was supposed to come today. Her master calls her Yanhong and says that this is the challenger of the 10 temples of hell. The girl asks why the protagonist didn't tell her he was a challenger. He says that even before he could speak, he had already attacked him. Knowing she was wrong, Yanhong pretends not to hear, making a displeased face. The master says that, in any case, he is welcome in hell. He politely greets the master, saying he is under his care from now on. As they sit around a table, the guardian explains that the first test of the temples tests the basic capacities of a human. Dung Makri says that instead of martial arts or strength, you will have to develop skills like endurance, tenacity, and poison tolerance. Smiling, the girl says that it seems the protagonist won't even be able to pass the first gate. Her master asks if she is still upset about what happened earlier, and Yanhong just pouts. He mentions that Oho couldn't pass the first gate. Jiyomo says he came here knowing it would be extremely difficult. The guardian informs him that from the second half of the 10 gates is when one begins to develop their martial skills. If he surpasses them all, he will become a phantom assassin. The warrior asks where the legendary assassin stopped. The guardian reveals that it was at the 9th gate. He then asks if the protagonist is confident that he will go all the way. He says that, in any case, he will have to try. The guardian says that Jiyomo will enter the first gate tomorrow after breakfast, while his disciple comments that he will die. In the castle of the Grand Master, in the Hall of the Thousand Dragons, someone enters the Grand Master's chamber and greets him. The man informs him that the 4th princess and the Archduke have returned. The Grand Master, with a mix of nervousness and concern, stands up. As soon as his children enter the room, he calls Yuren's name. While the princess greets him, he rushes to her, asking if she is hurt anywhere. She asks if, before anything else, she could at least greet the others. To which her father nervously says that it's fine. She begins to leave the hall. Her father asks the Archduke why his daughter has changed so much. His son, looking at him, says that they need to talk about the former commander's master, the man who was imprisoned in the Jade Prison. Her father puts his hand on his head, saying he imprisoned him to strengthen the Mirim factions. He tells his father not to worry. When the time comes, she will understand, and it will all only last for a while. Sitting on his throne, very angry, the Grand Master says that if it weren't for the protagonist, it would have erased the Celestial Palace from history entirely. His son says that their biggest concern at the moment is the bloodthirsty group, which is planning to attack them, while they cannot request help from the other families. The Grand Master says he understands, but insists that he must remove all the weeds before they overtake his garden. The Grand Master calls for one of his soldiers to come to him. He orders his soldier to bring Jizian to him. In the canyons where the temples of hell are located, a large explosion occurs. The guardian notices the explosion and becomes anxious, not knowing what happened. Both he and his disciple run toward the sound, while Jiyomo remains confused by their reaction. He wonders what is happening there. Suddenly, we can see hundreds of members of the bloodthirsty group running through the canyons. Looking down from above, the guardian asks what that is. He shouts, ordering to bring out the great beasts. Suddenly, a weapon resembling a cannon appears. From various directions, more emerge. It's when they start firing large arrows toward the members of the bloodthirsty group. Everyone is surprised by such a sudden attack. This attack manages to kill many of them. The guardian asks how they dare attack the 10 temples of hell. Noticing the guardian's presence, they prepare for battle. Suddenly, he shouts to the winds, commanding everyone to come out and defend the 10 temples of hell. With that, dozens of soldiers appear. The gate explodes in front of all of them. Angry, he asks if they are trying to destroy the entrance. The protagonist lands behind the guardian. He asks what is happening there. The guardian looks at the warrior with irritation and says that he wishes he knew the answer. The master says that this is the largest attack on the temple in recent times and asks who these people are. The warrior tells the guardian that if it isn't the bloodthirsty group or the Grand Master's castle, then it must be the Mirim factions. The girl, angry, asks what he did to make all of Mirim his enemy. The guardian, closing his eyes in frustration, says that when he was informed that the Celestial Palace disciple was the challenger, he should have expected something like this. Suddenly, an explosion occurs below them. The guardian orders everyone to enter the Iron Blood Cave. His disciple says she will not hide and will fight by his side. The master is surprised by her words. She asks if she hasn't been training to face dangers like this. Suddenly, fragments begin to fly in all directions. Debris falls. The members of the bloodthirsty group are in position. Suddenly, someone orders them to attack. Everyone begins to charge into battle. The old guardian orders everyone to attack. All the soldiers leap towards the members of the bloodthirsty group. They shout as they advance. Jiyomo observes that the bloodthirsty group sent many people just to capture him. On one of the hills, there was a man sitting alongside many soldiers as they watched the battle. He was wearing the uniform of the Great Master's castle. This was the 3rd prince of the Great Master's castle. He said that apparently other people had arrived earlier than them. Next to him was the commander of the Sunshine Troops, who said that apparently they were the lackeys of the bloodthirsty group. She asks what they will do if the bloodthirsty group captures the ex-commander first. The prince says that in any case, they can kill everyone there. Commander Hugh Yerim simply says they will observe until the situation becomes clear. The battle on the battlefield was very fierce, with members of the bloodthirsty group and the protectors of the infernal temples brutally attacking each other. Suddenly, the guardian also joins the battle, throwing many blades at the soldiers. His disciple, not very different, attacks several soldiers with his sharp blades. The celestial disciple also decides to join the battle, preparing to strike. He delivers a powerful blow with his sword. At that moment, several members of the bloodthirsty group are cut along with their swords. However, right behind him, there were already 2 more soldiers trying to attack him. He manages to react in time, turning to face his enemies. The ex-commander strikes his opponent, throwing him far away. Irritated, he stares at one of his enemies. Some soldiers were afraid to advance against him. However, a very large shadow behind them starts moving in his direction. The man casting the shadow places his hand on one of the soldiers' heads. He squeezes the man's head, killing him while cursing the soldiers. This was the cavalry master Muriang, who orders his soldiers to use stealth. With this, the members of the bloodthirsty group begin to disappear into the air. They confront their enemies while using their abilities. The guardian, extremely irritated, asks how they dare to use that. He charges at his enemies while launching various blades at them. Even though the attacks hit his enemies, it was as if their bodies were intangible. The guardian's disciple, surprised, asks how this is possible. The warrior moves in to attack, ordering them to back off. Frightened, they look at the man who is coming to attack their adversaries. Jiyomo passes by them, creating waves around him due to his speed, while both jump upwards to avoid being hit. He prepares his attack, motion of the 100 similarities. Transferring his attack, many blades are summoned before him. They strike his enemies, but since they are intangible, they take no damage. The protagonist is surprised by the fact that none of them were hit by his attack. With a determined look, he wonders if this is not enough. With that, he prepares for a new attack while lightning emanates from his arm. As he prepares to strike, it's possible to see many bolts of lightning coming from his body with enormous pressure. He says he will use the phantom energy explosion technique. Someone orders the members of the bloodthirsty group to attack him, and they rush at their enemy. However, Jiyomo also charges at them. He jumps while preparing to deliver a downward strike, leaving all his opponents surprised. When the celestial disciple finally attacks them, they are all sent flying as a great explosion occurs. Unlike the previous attacks, this one causes all the members of the bloodthirsty group who were hit to suffer damage and scream in pain. As he recovers from the strike he delivered, all the members who suffered the attack are lying on the ground, dead. Suddenly, someone strikes a spear on the ground, drawing the attention of the great warrior. It was the cavalry leader who praises his skill. The proud man says that the celestial disciple has skills similar to those he had 10 years ago. Looking at Murian, the protagonist thinks that surely this guy is strong. The man, pointing his spear at the celestial disciple, asks him to grant him a fight. The great warrior charges at his enemy, saying he will do as he asks. Jiyomo delivers an attack against his opponent. The cavalry master, predicting his move, attacks as well. When the ex-commander's sword collides with his spear, the spear becomes intangible. At that moment, the great warrior wonders if this was an illusion. Suddenly, he realizes that the cavalry master managed to wound him superficially. He leaps back, trying to gain distance from his enemy. Gaining distance, he lands on the ground with his clothes torn. The man looks at him and says that now it's his turn. Murian charges at Jiyomo. The man throws several blades with ropes attached. The blades move towards the protagonist in great numbers. He is extremely surprised by what he is seeing. The disciple uses his technique to summon several swords as well. He rushes towards his enemy while his swords go ahead, stopping his blades. The ex-commander manages to destroy all of Murian's blades except one that slips through. Swinging his sword, he manages to destroy the remaining one. The man mentally notes that they have lost all their swordsmen. The great warrior continues charging towards his enemy as fast as possible. The cavalry master tries to strike him, and the celestial disciple reciprocates with his own attack. When their blades collide, a large shockwave can be seen around them. Murian was confident in his victory, smiling maniacally. Jiyomo notices that his opponent is extremely strong as his sword gets damaged. The cavalry master shouts, exerting force. He manages to execute a powerful attack, throwing his opponent far away. Taking advantage of his enemy still being in the air, he tries to strike multiple times. However, with great difficulty, the protagonist manages to block his strikes. Suddenly, his enemy's blade comes towards his face at high speed. But again, with great effort and difficulty, the celestial disciple manages to block the attack. The man shouts as he starts a spinning motion with his spear. Muriang increases the speed of this movement even more. The protagonist, defending himself from the attack, notices that his sword is cracking. He decides to stop defending, moving out of the attack's path, and gets a slight scratch on his face. Surprising the cavalry master, he dodges the attack and attempts to strike back. With great difficulty, the master manages to dodge the attack. The celestial disciple begins a series of strikes, trying to hit his enemy. Muriang admits to himself that his opponent is indeed powerful. Jiyomo shouts as he rushes towards him in anger. He brandishes his sword, attacking his enemy. With great effort, the cavalry master manages to block his attacks. The cavalry master gets irritated, his eyes turning black as he launches a powerful strike at the celestial disciple. The great warrior blocks the attack, but he ends up being pushed back with impact. The member of the bloodthirsty group once again launches many blades at the protagonist. To defend himself, he summons his blades again. Both continue attacking each other from a distance. As Jiyomo's blades approach him, Muriang wonders how this could happen as he swings his spear. With great effort, he swings his spear, defending himself from the great warrior's attacks. But suddenly, something surprises him. A blade was about to strike him in the abdomen. With a mix of irritation and nervousness, he manages to block the blade. He looks at his opponent, who is staring at him from a distance. The man asks if these are the martial arts of the Celestial Palace. While removing his torn cloak, Jiyomo says that, as he mentioned, these are martial arts, but he has not yet mastered them 100%. The master of the bloodthirsty group says there's no reason to let him live any longer. With that, he starts summoning an attack, causing destruction around him. The celestial disciple positions himself to receive the attack. His opponent launches the attack, telling him to die. His enemy's attack is like a large, cutting spiral. As he prepares to receive the attack, the great warrior starts laughing. He looks determinedly at his opponent's attack, confessing that he must increase his power. He begins summoning the great light, causing destruction. The giant attack of his enemy approaches, and Jiyomo forms some kind of protection with the light. Suddenly, from the large sphere of light, blades begin to emerge. With the movement of his hand, these blades head towards his enemy's attack. The blades penetrate the spiral. A powerful explosion can be seen. The Guardian and his disciple look in shock at such power. The explosion was so intense that everyone on the battlefield stopped fighting to witness it. The man with black eyes and red pupils was clearly exerting great effort. Not much different, the protagonist with black eyes and blue pupils was also putting in great effort. Both prepare to stab their opponent. They stab each other without revealing who the true victor is. We can see that the cavalry master was pierced by the celestial disciple's sword. The great warrior, exhausted, laughs while his enemy's spear is at his neck, superficially. The bloodthirsty groove soldier looks in shock at his opponent's blade in his chest. Jiyomo places his other hand on his sword. He looks determined and angry at his opponent. Suddenly, he turns, pulling his sword and slashing his opponent's chest up to his shoulder. As he falls to the ground, the man repeats the name of the celestial palace. The protagonist stands while his opponent falls dead on the ground. He looks at his enemy's body, making sure he won't get up. In pain, he places his hand on his right chest. Unexpectedly, he starts coughing blood while clearly feeling extreme pain. Still holding his right chest, he kneels down, resting his sword on the ground as he tries to recover. The Guardian faces